The HUD's committee will now come to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Boyd.
Present.
Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Hubbard.
Present.
Alderman Coder.
Here.
Alderwoman Spencer.
Present.
Alderman Oldenburg.
Present.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Present.
Chairman Rhodey.
Present.
7 present. You have quorum.
Great. We'll begin with the approval of the minutes of our last meeting.
I move to approve the minutes from the, October 14th, 2020 HUD's committee meeting.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Chairman, I just have a question for you. It's also minutes on there for June 24th that were never approved. It was an oversight on our part where we never put it on the agenda.
Okay.
Will he be able to state the motion to include those as well?
Well, why don't we just do it in 2 separate motions then?
Okay.
Okay.
Alderman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Hubbard.
Aye.
Alderman Coder.
Aye.
Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Oldenburg.
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
Chairman Rhodey.
Aye.
Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Spencer.
Aye.
7 aye votes.
Okay, by your vote, we've approved the minutes of the October 14th meeting. Now, if we could have a motion to approve the minutes from the June 24th meeting.
I move that we approve the HUD's committee meeting minutes from the June 24th, 2020 meeting.
Second.
Previous roll.
We'll consider the minutes approved for the June 24th meeting. Okay, we have before us today a few board bills, and I'm anticipating several of them are going to be fairly lengthy, but we try to accommodate those aldermen who are not present on our committee. And we have one bill from Alderwoman, we try to prioritize when they're not on the committee. So we'll go ahead and recognize Alderwoman Middlebrook for the purposes of board bill number 85.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Board Bill 85, there was a blighted study and a plan for the North Broadway, Perry Avenue, Harris Avenue redevelopment area. Board, January 21st of this year. This bill provides for a redevelopment plan under Chapter 100 for the North Broadway, Perry Harris Avenue redevelopment area. The purpose of this project is to facilitate the development of the area into a prospective commercial use. This plan allows for up to 15 years tax abatement and no use of eminent domain. And I have Nicole Blummer here from Green Street to answer any questions that you may have.
Nicole, did you care to discuss your project? Is it something that's imminent, or is?
Sure, happy to do that. Nicole Blumner with Green Street. We are working to redevelop a 14-acre site here, and it's fairly imminent. Yes, we're hoping to break ground next year. We've been working with a company that is located in the area to retain them here, and basically we need this tax abatement to facilitate this development. It will be a new, I'm going to share my screen here so you can see where this is. It'll be a new development that sits between Clarence and Athlone at North Broadway. So just at the Cary Avenue exit where Love's Travel Center is located. This is a company that's been in the area for some time, and they're looking to expand their facility. So it's job retention and job creation, about 75 jobs. They hope to add another 45 jobs that pay about $60,000 a year. And we have quite a bit of environmental cleanup to do on this site. It's mostly vacant at this time. It's blighted, it needs cleanup, it needs new infrastructure. And so basically it will give us the opportunity to secure this company for this facility and construct an $18 million development on this site and improve the area. And really it's in keeping with the North Riverfront business corridor plan of attracting and retaining industrial to this part of the city.
Okay. Do we have any questions for Ms. Blumner? Let's go through the committee. Alderman Boyd, do you have any questions or?
No question, Mr. Chair.
Has Alderwoman Davis joined us yet?
Yes, sir. I have no questions.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to find my committee list here. Where is it? Oh, here it is. Alderwoman Hubbard, any questions?
No question, Mr. Chair.
Alderman Kotar.
No questions.
Alderwoman Spencer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I must have missed this in the intro. Who is the business that's going in to this location?
It's a company that's located in the area at this time. We're not ready to release their name, but it's a established long-term large company in the transportation industry.
What transportation, like in a general sense, or do you have any more specific information you could share? Just curious what's going on. It's such a
trucking, sales, service, repair, maintenance.
Okay, thanks. I thought I had missed it, but apparently it was not disclosed. That's all I have, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Alderman Oldenburg, any questions?
Just one. Good morning, Nicole. How are you?
Good morning.
Would this be, how many jobs are anticipated to be retained or added to this? Do you have a sense of that?
Sure. They presently have about 74 jobs at their current site, and those would be retained. They hope to add, with the expanded facility, about 44 new jobs over the coming years, and the jobs pay about $60,000 a year on average.
Great. Appreciate that. No further questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Has Alderwoman Boyd joined us yet? I presume she has not. I can't see her on here.
I have no questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay, well, we want to congratulate the Alderwoman from the 27th on a nice new development for her.
Second.
I'm sorry, you're right. I'm sorry. I get my North River ladies all confused.
That's okay. You spoke it into existence. I'll take it.
Okay, if there are no other questions, we'd like to go ahead and entertain a motion on Board Bill number 85.
I move that we pass Board Bill 85 out of committee.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded.
Previous round.
I think we were missing a couple people, so why don't we go ahead and do a new roll?
Who wasn't here?
The Alderwoman from the 19th wasn't on the previous row.
Oh, okay.
Alderman Boyd,
Aye.
Alderwoman Davis,
Aye.
Alderwoman Hubbard,
Aye.
Alderman Coder,
Aye.
Alderwoman Spencer,
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg,
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd, Chairman Brody,
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
Oh, I heard you. Thank you. 8 aye votes.
Okay, by your vote, we have perfected and passed out of committee board bill number 85. I'm going to
Thank
jump
you.
around. Congratulations, Alderwoman from the 2nd. We'll jump around a little bit. I suspect there's a lot of several Alder people or others that are interested in the block grant, which is something that is always of a great deal of interest each year. I want to forgive some of the other folks who are here, but this is, we got a lot of people probably interested in this. So we'll go ahead and take this up at this point. Our Director of CDA, Mr. Matt Moak, if you would here to take over and kind of walk us through this year's allocations.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Matt Moak, Director of CDA. I have with me today on the call, in the event we have questions or would like to say something else regarding what we discussed today, Bill Rata, our Director of Housing, and also Justin Jackson, our Director of Compliance at CDA. As you all know, annually, here comes Bill. As you all know, annually we estimate the amount of federal Cdbg home, ESG, and HOPO funding that we are to receive from the federal government. There's always an estimation that becomes actual. It would become actual in this case early in 2021. We estimate it based on our actual number from the prior year. This year, we're estimating $25 million in total between those 4 programs, and that is based on what we received last year. Surprisingly, last year, our federal government HUD allocation went up by about $1 million, which is somewhat surprising given the current administration. But based on that, we're estimating that amount today, and the board bill in front of you contains a total of $25 million. What I would like to do, I had some success with this last year with the committee, and I'd like to do it again this year, is break out for you, particularly in the Cdbg realm, how roughly $18 million in Cdbg is out of the 25 total, how that amount is broken down. I call it above the line and below the line, meaning we have inside programs that we fund as well as our own administration, et cetera, that we back off that $18 million number. And then ultimately we get down to a number that we put out in an RFP to the public, which we did again this year in August, soliciting nonprofits and other businesses to propose programs to us, which serve the general community and in the city. So right now I'm going to attempt to share my screen to walk us through that a little bit. So this is where I'd like to start. Again, we're talking about Cdbg at this point only. You see at the upper left, our estimated allocation for 2021, 18,400,000 and some odd. The program income number, we do receive a little income from low interest loans that we do in the housing area. It's not a lot of money, but as the allocation goes, we project and add that back in. So the total we have available is 18,426,982 number. So again, I'm getting into the what I call above the line items before we get into the competitive proposals that we received from the community. So most of you are familiar with these lines at the left and the description, but I know that not all of you are. So I would like to go through them briefly. And obviously anyone please interject if you have a question. The first line, the city healthy home repair inspection. I think most of you know that we have a robust healthy home repair program at CDA. It provides money for individuals to repair their homes in the low and moderate income area, meaning these are low and moderate income individuals that qualify for the program. Part of that involves having the building division conduct inspections of those homes for us initially, and after the work is complete, to indicate that it is done. That first line is an allocation to the building division to help us get these houses inspected to the tune of $300,000. That number is unchanged from last year and hasn't changed in quite some time. The next number represents the amount of money that we would like to dedicate to City Healthy Home Repair. We call it the loan pool. It's really a combination of forgivable loans, grants, and deferred payment loans that we issue to individuals to help repair their homes. I'm going to come back to this a little bit today, but I think you're going to see as we go through that CDA for the year 2021 is going to attempt to devote more money to home repair, and the line right below it, housing production, which focuses on affordable housing, than we have in the past. Part of that is attributable to the increase in funding we received from the federal government, but most of it is due to other reductions or changes in these line items you see on your screen at this moment. So I'd like to go through that so you understand. I think we're trying to refocus CDA a little bit here in 21 to do more in the housing area, and that's a theme you're going to hear from me today as we go through it. So the healthy home repair, you see that at $2,500,000, it's up $1 million from last year. Our big jump is what we're going to try to do in the affordable housing area. Many of you know that we also allocated money in the emergency funds that came in from the federal government by the law passed on March 27, that we allocated a generous portion of the Cdbg emergency money towards affordable housing as well. So what I envision doing, and we're going to be doing this over the next 30, 60, 90 days, is issuing our second notice of funding availability in 2020. We issued one earlier this year. We funded almost $7 million in gap financing and other projects in the city. We're very proud of it. We're going to issue another notice of funding availability shortly using this money you see on your screen, the 4502799, and also the money that we have still from the emergency funds in affordable housing. We're going to combine those two numbers and we're going to get a big NOFA on the street. So that's something that's upcoming. But again, I think the theme here is that 2021, we're going to be doing more housing construction and housing repair than we have done in recent years. So that is coming around the bend. I want to mention too, and some of you are on the special committee for the emergency funds and will recognize this comment, others may not. But part of the emergency funding we received in Cdbg as well, we pledged to the Affordable Housing Commission to also produce low and moderate income housing on behalf of our citizens. That amount is $1.5 million, up to $1.5 million. I've somewhere between $1 million, $1.5 million, and I think we're going to be closer to $1.5 million. That amount is not on your screen. It is not something, I'm not talking about the emergency funds today because we already did a board bill on that, passed them, appropriate and whatnot. But it's also part of this component of doing more in the affordable housing area, and I think it's worth mentioning. The CDA Rehabilitation Administration, you see it was $850,000 last year. It's at $1,050,000 this year. Now, let me backtrack. And that's basically money that we use to fund staff working in housing production and healthy home repair. It's different than regular CDA admin, which is 2 lines down. But it is distinct in that it is targeted at public improvements, and we separate it for various reasons. One reason is our general administration is subject to a federal cap of 20%. So the $1,050,000 number, though, that you see for this year in CDA Rehab Administration has a definite reason for it, and that is last year, the Missouri State Historical Preservation Office began requiring what they call architectural surveys whenever we do construction that is below grade. This was no matter what. We've always had historical oversight, what they call Section 106 oversight in this area. But SHPO imposed new requirements on us when we go below grade on any development. It requires us to outsource what they call architectural surveys, which just survey the ground and determine whether or not there's anything of historical significance there. And it's going to cost some money. We've already issued an RFP for it. We've received some attractive proposals to do it for us, but we're projecting it's going to cost about $200,000 a year to do this in the housing production area, and thus we have added it to the 2021 projection. The next line I think is interesting, and I want to point it out, the Section 108 loan payment. For those of you who probably know what that is, some may not. Section 108 loan is a loan that CDA is able to obtain from the federal government when we need additional money to do a specific project or a very large project where we can't squeeze it in within the annual allocation. The Section 108 payment, you see it last year at $355,031. That was our final payment on a 20-year Section 108 loan that originated with the building of the Convention Center Hotel. So for quite a number of years, 19 years, the payment on that loan was roughly $1 million a year. I guess I want to say that I felt like we've explored Section 108 loans for other projects that we currently could use one for, but I frankly was against it, given the concern about the city credit rating. And I think our need to squeeze our money in a way that we're not out there with a loan like this and we're just operating using our annual appropriation. So this year, we finished the last payment on that. It was a smaller payment at the end of the 20-year balloon, if you will, $355,031. And for the following year, of course, we have no allotment for that. That effectively frees up another $1 million that we normally would not have. Down to the next line, the administration line, again, that is capped at $2 million. I'm sorry, $2 million, 20% of our annual awards. We take the 18,696 number and calculate that by 20%, you will come to the 2,160,396. That is for running of CDA, yes, but it's also running other programs that are going to appear right below this line of administration. Federal grants, administrative support for the comptroller, legal services support for the city councilor's office, PDA, SLDC administration, and minority contractors capacity building are all included as administration costs in the calculation of the cap. So that it's just something to keep in mind as we go forward. But basically, we got to bring our number in at 20% of the grant, and then the other programs that follow our administration costs as well. So I think most of you probably know, but the Federal Grants Administration Support pays for staff in the federal grants section of the Comptroller's Office who process CDA payments. Legal Services Support provides legal support through the City Councilor's Office for CDBG and home projects. The Planning and Urban Design Agency, we all know, this provides funding for them for the administration of CDBG funded planning efforts. SLDC administration is funding for SLDC staff working on CDBG eligible activities. And finally, the minority contractors capacity building is for funding for capacity building for MB and WBE contractors. It also funds what is called the plan room to allow minority contractors access for construction plans and specs. It is slightly decreased there, you'll see, from prior years. And the only reason for that is when we got down in the weeds with a lot of these numbers, frankly, we saw that not all the money was being expended on an annual basis, so we trimmed the budget to match the actual expenditures. That's what happened here with minority contractors. Looking up above, and I kind of skipped over this and I didn't mean to, the other thing that we did do is, given the 3% raise in personnel costs that was passed this year in the city, we tried to build in a 3% increase for some of those 2021 numbers you see there: planning, legal services support, federal grants. Those all contain roughly 3% raise. And what we're really just trying to do there is match up, if you will, to the costs that we're seeing those entities incurring in personnel. The Lra Maintenance Program is a little interesting. I was a little skeptical about this program when I took over about 16 months ago, in terms of the amount that is expended towards this property. I've been convinced of its necessity over the last year and a half or so. But one thing that we ran into there was, when I came aboard, there were two positions within LRA, one being their vacancy coordinator, which was a big hire for them a couple of years ago that was vacant. So last year we reduced that amount. LRA has communicated with me that they intend to fill the vacancy coordinator position, as well as at least one other position, with a total cost, including fringe benefits and whatnot, of $100,000. And I've agreed to raise that amount back up to the $1,050,000 level, which is a level it was at roughly 3 years ago and has been out for some time. The next line, commercial district facade. This program, committee members might remember me talking about this program last year, and I was not happy with the results of this program when I took over at CDA. There was a lot of money going in the program and not a lot of results. What we ended up doing here is, well, let me backtrack. What I told this committee last year, and what I've also talked to SLDC about directly, was last fall, I was going to give it a year at the 850,000 number that you see there on the right for 2020. And if we didn't start seeing increased results in the facade program, I was going to reduce their funding. Well, they ran into COVID. That happened. And, you know, it's really no getting around that. It was hard to do construction. It was hard for the facade people at SLDC to get their work done. But what we ended up, there were really no projects in facade generated at all in 2020 because of COVID or other reasons I do not know. But in 18 and 19, there were quite a few projects that were A, backlogged, and B, done and ready to go that needed to go forward. We are moving the 2018 and 2019 projects forward now, and getting the money out to these businesses to improve their facades. And excuse me, it's just been a long time coming. But what we ended up deciding to do between 18, 19, and 20 allocations, there is roughly $1,500,000 that remains to fund personnel costs and projects within the commercial facade program. That money, we're going to allow that to be used to complete the 18-19 projects. But for the current year, what we are proposing is to reduce the amount of other funding to them, if you will, to 310. And what I mean by that is, the 310,000 is roughly the cost of the personnel that works in that program at SLDC. That can go forward, in my opinion, but we don't need any more money for projects until we spend the $1.5 million that we already have. We've spoken with local HUD about this. It's quite an ordeal that I won't belabor you with. But my point being, the mandate is on the program now to move the $1.5 million and all the 18-19 projects, some 20 projects, although COVID limited that, And then next year, we will look again at this program and figure out if that 310,000 you see there in 21 should increase or not. So that's where we are with that one. The Business Development Support Program provides loans for the support of new or expanding businesses in order to create or retain jobs. We've proposed funding that at roughly the same amount, exact same amount as last year. Elderly Services comes out of the Department of Human Services, and they provide home delivered meals to seniors and disabled residents. This number changes dramatically for multiple reasons, but suffice to say the 255,000 that was there in 2020 for this program was sufficient. It had been sufficient for years. Earlier this year, the state of Missouri cut funding to this program and has really hamstrung St. Louis area and aging in terms of funding availability. It's dire. All I could commit to them, however, given the other commitments that we have, was to raise them by 140,000, and we did that utilizing money that had been assigned to a different program, and they declined our money. So we moved that money over in 2020 to the area, St. Louis area on aging, and got them through a tough time in the summer of 20, particularly with COVID. But we'd like to leave that funding in place for them going forward because they're taking hits from other funding angles. Most of you are aware of Operation Brightside helps remove graffiti in the city, as well as other litter eradication and beautification projects. We're seeing that there I have the 3% increase that I referred to earlier, going from 340 to 350. Same thing with the expanded recreation program. Nothing really new to report there. I'm sure most of you are familiar with it. It provides recreational opportunities for youth after school and during the summer in low and moderate income areas of the city. Problem Property Team Program has a couple components. Again, what you see there, the 209 and 215 is a simple 3% raise. That unit is, of course, still in existence and operating within the law department, and we pretty much kept them level except for the 3%. Municipal courts, I probably should have taken off this schedule, but it was a very small amount of the problem property grant that originated years ago. Last year, they declined our funding because frankly, they didn't want to do our paperwork, and it wasn't a large amount of money. So it became zero last year, and it's still zero last year. Next year, I'm just going to take it off. The last part of this is particularly interesting, but right now there is a federal grant and program to the tune of $29.5 million taking place in the Preservation Square neighborhood in Alderwoman Hubbard's 5th Ward. The city committed $10 million in CDBG funding to this. Well, it became CDBG funding, but we committed $10 million to this project way back 2016. It has taken forever to get this thing off the ground. It is finally starting. But as part of that, over the last several years, we've had to set aside CDBG funding to get to the $10 million number that was pledged, even though it was under the Mayor Slay's administration, was pledged to this project. The $1,228,745 you see there in 2020 is the last of CDA's essentially setting it aside, CDBG money, to meet the $10 million threshold. So the good news is we're there. It has not helped us in our being timely with HUD. I didn't bore you with that, but we have a timeliness requirement. We have to spend this money every year down to a certain number, and stockpiling money for Preservation Square has hurt us on timeliness. It's been very difficult. Well, that's the bad news, but the good news is we have our set aside, and so for 2021, the set aside is zero. So when we add these numbers down the page, you see the subtotal there, 14,893,195. And again, I refer to those as above the line items. This is an increase from last year, which is sort of interesting because we don't have the choice set aside. We don't have the 108 loan. There's things that we've reduced NCD. There's things that we've done. But we, again, getting back to the major theme, we are going to put much more money into housing production and home repair than we have in the past, and get back to what I think CDA does best, which is build housing and repair housing, along with their other social service programs. So we come down with that number, and you can see a drop. I'm basically dropping down that same number, 18,626,982. When we subtract the above the line number, 14,893,195 above it, that leaves that 3,733,787 that is available for the RFP proposals that we received in August of this year. I want to come back to that, of course, and talk about that a little bit for the committee. But I do think, what we just went through is really the meat of CDA operations and money that we use the annual appropriation for. At the very bottom of the screen, and then I'm gonna get away from this document, is what we call the public service cap. It is a HUD imposed 19% cap requirement on what money we can use of the annual appropriation to fund public services. And again, I'm going to get into the public services in a minute. A lot of you are going to recognize the not-for-profits and that work in this area. But this year, our cap calculation, 19% of the current year allocation plus the 200,000 projected program income, is 3,541,787. Interestingly, when we received our emergency funds for public services in the spring and then the summer, the Board of Aldermen appropriated them, their HUD waived the cap on public services. And obviously it's not too hard to see why that is, because we needed to get money out into the community to help with COVID in a big way. And so the cap did not apply. However, for the annual appropriation, the cap is back and you see it there. What we have to do is this year we received almost $8 million in competitive proposals in the public service area. A lot of them are good, but we have to discard some, and we also have to trim some to roughly half of the ask that they make to get the total award down to the 3,541,787 number. So I'm going to stop the share of this document and then put another document up as I get a little further with this. Let me ask first, though, is there any questions from anyone on the committee at this point? It's a good spot to open it up a little bit, I think.
Let's see. I'll go through the list here. Alderman Boyd, any questions?
Sure, I have some questions. I'm just not sure if I need to just wait until the full presentation made, or if I should jump in right now, but certainly I have some questions and comments.
Okay.
Alderwoman Davis, I'll leave it up to you. You want to ask a question now, or do you want to come back?
I'll wait to ask my questions. Thank you.
Alderwoman Hubbard?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd definitely like to ask some questions right now while the issue is very fresh on our heads. So thank you for giving us an overview of how things are moving. And I guess my concern is the way that things are moving. Some of the things that I definitely have concerns about. I know that when I first got elected at the end of 2011, that's when the shift first happened, and all the people didn't really have a say in like home repair and housing production and stuff like that. And I know there were a myriad of reasons of why that changed. Okay, so jumping ahead all of these years, roughly 10 years now, I think there's some discontent with the way things have been handled regarding the various programs. It's almost hard to get information. And so although we've been totally pushed out of that process, they don't even require a support letter or anything, from us. I think that there's a problem when, as an alderperson, we are the last ones to know what's happening or what's moving in our ward, especially when funds are being allocated to organizations who've been allocated a lot of money over the years, and we have no update on the LRA properties that they receive. But you see the city and CDA is continuously giving them money, CDA funds, that you won't get this information unless you actually inquire about it. They're constantly giving them funds. And so when you request information to get a total overview of all the properties that they have acquired from the city and all of the funds that they've acquired from the city and what the actual update is on where they are with those properties, have they sold them? So this is the type of information that is not readily shared with the alderperson, and I have a problem with that. And also I would like to see an overview throughout the wards, you know, like per ward, how many housing production dollars were received, how many were used per ward, how many LRA properties were received. Well, we know we get the LRA information, but sometimes, you know, you hear these different disparities throughout the city. You'll have a person with a home and there's an LRA property right next door, and they'll, you know, call you and say, well, they're giving me hell. They're trying to charge me XYZ dollars for this lot next to my house. But you'll see a non-for-profit in our wards, you all give them the property for $100, $200, and then CDA money on top of that, and then they'll flip it and make money. And it's like we're left out of that entire process. And if you follow it some, it's the usual suspects, the usual people that know the inroads into the city and into our city government. And meanwhile, many minorities and many minority non-for-profits are being left out that system if you aren't in that good old boy network. So I definitely have a problem with that. And going forward, I would like to see us be very transparent in how much money we are allocating, to whom we are allocating, and how are we going by this election process to make sure that we are being equitable across the city. And last but not least, and I really hate to dump this headache in your lap regarding the whole Preservation Square thing, because you know it's one that I've been working on for probably 4 or 5 years now. But I guess I'm just taken back by the fact that the city keeps dumping money over there. I championed the Choice Neighborhood Grant along with them, went to DC several times. They received a $30 million Choice Neighborhood Grant from HUD. They leveraged another $100 and some million. There was delay after delay after delay. They tried to press me for tax abatement, which was never included in their original plans. And we're talking about McCormick, Vern, Salazar, and Urban Strategies. That's who we're talking about. They simply bamboozled my community. The tax abatement was never on the table. And they told me that they definitely needed it because there was an increase in construction costs. And I because there was, we have an open mic. But there was an increase in construction costs because there was delays in tax credits. So here we are. We have an eyesore in my community, one that the homeless people are constantly burning up. It's the old car schools, a historic building. It's been in ruins for some time because the funding was just not in place to do it. And so they've done all of this shiesty, borderline illegal stuff with Justine Peterson, IFF, and haven't fulfilled any of the promises that my community and the bulk of my constituents have, you know, begged them to do, and it's what they promised them. And you look at all of this fancy stuff that they put on paper, but we've been barking about it for like 2 years now, and the city is going above and beyond. And you said it yourself, they have put you all in an awkward space, but the city is going above and beyond, just trying not to lose the grant that you all have allocated to a developer who has done nothing more in the city of St. Louis but gain his wealth on the backs of poor people and creating a public housing corridor in one of the most crime-ridden neighborhoods in the city of St. Louis. So I question the city of St. Louis, SLDC. I've pitched this to the mayor over and over again. What are we going to do as a city and as an organization, SLDC, CDA, or whomever, to stop just throwing money down the drain to somebody who's definitely been playing in St. Louis politics and knows how to get around the alderperson. I mean, so strategically that when I wouldn't vacate a street or give a tax abatement, they skewed the deal and structured it in a way to where they didn't need me. So I posed the question, if you all continue to want us to vote on stuff, you know, you all bundle these deals up with Red Bow, and the most impoverished citizens in this city keep being just bombarded. You know, it's everything that we are barking about right now when it comes to systemic racism and institutional racism and feeding your friends and getting rich on the backs of Black people who've been oppressed for 400 years. I just want to know, as a city, when we bring this forward, when residents bring this forward, how are we going to fix this? And I'm telling you now, if we don't fix it, don't count on me to vote for anything, because it's very disheartening that we have to fight this hard to get anything. And then, you know, you guys just trick us and just do what you want to do with the money and continue to feed your friends. So I know that was loaded commentary. I've been needing to get that out for some time, but we've appealed all the way up to HUD. We've appealed to all of our federal and local officials. And I'm depending on someone in the city of St. Louis, someone in our legislature, someone to do something, because I'm tired of McCormick and Barron urban strategies and the city of St. Louis by way of these development partners that they've had. I'm tired of them tricking my community. You know, I'm tired of them mistreating Black poor people and canceling them out of deals, saying there's no equity in deals when they're top heavy and been doing everything and being self-serving for all of my life. I know several years, 40 years plus. So that's all I have. And I just hope that we can move forward as a city and just start cutting the pie differently and start doing stuff right and start sharing the information about what's actually going on in our community. And so that's all I have. And I don't even expect you to try to answer all of that. I just hope that you was just take it in, because I'm beyond frustrated and I'm tired of dealing with it.
Well,
That's all I have. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I don't know if I have permission to respond a little bit, just a bit. Can I do so?
Proceed. Go ahead, Mr. Moult.
Okay. So, Alderwoman, I empathize with a lot of the things you're saying. I know the city has ever really seen a project as monstrous as it's a federal HUD project. And I think we need to make that distinction here. The orders for the Choice Preservation Square project effectively come out of Washington, D.C. And I'm not condemning it or, you know, advocating that as much as just saying it's just very unique in terms of the way the original choice grant was applied for by McCormick Barron. I think Urban Strategies was involved in that. The federal government granted that request, again, to the tune of $29.5 million project at the site. You know, it predates me, so I can't speak intelligently about that, but I empathize because I understand that there are residents in that area that just don't understand what's going on. I mean, honestly, it took me many months after coming here a year and a half ago to sort of try to understand exactly what the Preservation Square project, Choice project was and the direction it was going in. But I will tell you that I don't think it's trickery, not down here anyway, because, you know, we're trying to be as transparent as we can about that project.
You guys keep giving them the money to fill their gap, but I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but we got to be honest about what's going on here. So the city keeps giving them the money. The city is the grant holder. It's a HUD, a federal grant, but the city is the grant holder that they've allocated to urban strategies. The money moves through the city of St. Louis. And on top of that, you all have allocated more money outside of the grant.
Well, so okay, let's say a couple things about that, but you're right, because it's a federal HUD program, the money has to come through CDA. And we have to oversee it. Needless to say, it's a behemoth for us administratively to do Preservation Square, because CDA is just not equipped to do that big of a project on a normal basis. It is a huge deal for us to try to stay up with this. But I do, you know, at least since I can only speak to since I've been here, but I will tell you that originally 2016, the commitment to the city toward this project was $10 million and has not changed by $1 since that time. And I guess I mentioned that because, you know, when I came in, I questioned where this project was going. Was it going to be overruns? Was there going to be more demands for money, et cetera, et cetera? Is it too big to fail for HUD? Yeah, I think it's too big to fail. I don't know how else to say it. But the city's piece, the city's commitment to it has not changed $1 since 2016. And it's behind schedule. It has to be done by 2023. It's a statute. The choice program is by congressional statute and law that is in place. So there's going to be a lot happening. I mean, I want to be as transparent as I can possibly be for the residents and yourself. I do, but it's just, the horse is so far out of the barn on this. It's really hard to go back and criticize and talk about. I think that we all would benefit just trying to do everything we can to get this project to completion. Honestly, Alderwoman Hubbard, I've had questions about, doubts about this project even being able to be completed. Simple as that. I mean, it's too big to fail. And we've expressed this to numerous people, including the Washington, D.C. people. So I remain hopeful, but I just want to say that I understand your concerns with a monstrous project like this affecting your ward, and I'm happy to sit down and talk to you about it. I just, you know, some more whenever is convenient for you, because I don't want you to think that we're hiding the ball here at CDA, because we're not. Back to your other point, though, on you're right. I mean, the alderpersons, the Board of Aldermen were effectively taken out of the process that we're talking about today back in 2013, 2014. And when HUD came in and basically, as you know, you referenced it, you know, HUD came in and basically revamped the entire way things had to be done at CDA. And it was not going to be any longer simply an alderperson getting in touch with us and saying, I want to do this in my ward. We moved to a completely transparent process of issuing RFPs for proposals and also issuing notices of funding available. We did have housing funds available so that people could apply. And all this is done on the internet and through massive email blasts that all the aldermen receive. And that's our new way of doing things. The Board of Aldermen have been minimized by HUD. I mean, that happened. It's happened now for about 6 years or so. But I still feel like, of course, I want to hear from the aldermen, and I still do quite a bit. And I want to get their input on a certain project or developer. I still take that. I want to take that. Our housing people take that input. I'm sure the mayor's office gets input, you know, here and there that comes down to us. I know it's happened. And so that process is still happening. And I don't want you to believe, or any of the other aldermen to believe, you're completely cut out of the situation. I mean, Alderwoman Davis, I know you're on the call right now. I thought of a thing that we did about 2 months ago where I had to bring bad news to you about a project in the 19th Ward. But I basically told you what the bad news was and how we were going to make it right, and we worked through it. But I mean, I want to keep aldermen informed as much as possible, despite the fact that now our process is way different than it was back in the day. So I guess I just want to share that. I think unless there's other questions or observations, I will move on. I don't have too much more, Mr. Chairman.
You opened up the gate there for a second. We had Alderman, you've asked to pause, so that was Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderman Kodar, did you have any questions or?
Briefly, just one, Chairman. Sorry, I'm doing double duty. I'm also in court on a separate computer this morning. Mr. Moak, you mentioned towards the beginning of your remarks, you were talking about, I think, the home repair loan pool program, and that number has gone up about $1 million and 1.25 million. Can you talk to me just a little bit about that? How many people are on that list for those, how long's the waiting list? I'm not sure if you covered that earlier, if I just missed it, but
No,
for the, I guess, yeah, go ahead.
No, you did, Alderman, and I just really was focusing on the theme here, which is we try to get more money in the program. I do have Bill Rata here with me, who oversees that program in its entirety, and I would like him, he can't address your question. I'm allowing him to do so right now, if that's okay.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Want me to just turn it?
Hi, good morning. So to answer your question, Alderman, there are about a little over 1,200 people currently on the waiting list. It's citywide. And, the average wait is at least a couple of years. We're working to get that down as, quickly as we can. But we do have, an emergency component of the program where if somebody has a leaky roof or the furnace goes out, there's sewer lateral collapses, the water line breaks, severe electrical hazard, we can address those things outside the waiting list. So we can address their immediate need. So that is something that we put in place with HUD's blessing to help the most critical situations.
Okay, great. So you mentioned the waits roughly a year or so. Is that how long's the wait usually on average?
It's a couple of years, actually.
Okay. So how many of these are we getting through? How many of these repairs, non-emergency, I guess with the emergency and just getting through the backlog, how many are we getting through a year? Because it seems like every year that at least I've been on this committee, we've had a very, very long wait list.
Yeah, we have a long wait list just because the program's so popular. There's a lot of need in the city, but we typically send out anywhere from 500 to 600 applications a year from people on the waiting list. And we, not all of those actually fully complete their applications and we assist them. But we usually eliminate 500 to 600 every year.
Okay, and my last question is approximately what's the average, these are loans, right?
They're a combination of grants and forgivable loans and deferred payment loans.
Okay, so what's about on average, what per house, what are we spending?
Probably about 18 to 19,000.
Okay, that's all I've got. Thank you, guys. That's very helpful.
Alderwoman Spencer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So my questions were along the lines of the Healthy Home Repair Program as well. If I understand correctly, so we've got about $18,000 to $20,000 per house. I still don't understand. And forgive me if this was described, Bill, but if we've got 500 to 600 applications a year, how many houses are we actually repairing in a given year?
Anywhere from 150 to 200.
So 150 to 200 with a waiting list of 1,200. It seems like that would be recovering about, 15% of the wait list on an annual basis.
Well, that's the number of people who actually go through the program and get their houses repaired. There's also, we send out 500 to 600 applications, but not all of those will be completed. A lot of folks don't even turn in the application.
So when, sorry, Bill. So the 1,200 on the waiting list, how many of those actually qualify for the program and go through it? Are we clearing all those, or are some of those folks just not, they don't fully meet the standards or something of that nature?
Yeah, just being on the waiting list, we don't actually know if they actually qualify until we send them an application and they complete it. So a lot of those folks may not have ever turned in an application or they never completed. So we don't know because we can't take application documents at the time we put them on the waiting list.
So, okay, so you get on the waiting list and then you get an application in the mail when your turn is kind of up?
Correct.
Okay, so then we're sending out applications for almost half of the folks on the waiting list on an annual basis.
Correct, yeah, but it also grows by the same number or even more depending on how many calls.
I get you. That's a much better, I have a much better understanding and feel a little bit better about that than thinking we're only getting through 150 out of 1,200 on an annual basis, but it sounds like many of them aren't fully applying. Do we have a breakout of how those funds are distributed, either via loan or forgivable loan, or kind of how that looks like on an annual basis and the distribution geographically, maybe by neighborhood? I don't know that we need a political designation, but just kind of geography, maybe based on the average income of the neighborhood or something of that nature.
Yeah, we do have a report that we break all that out. So that's something we can get to you.
Excellent. You could just send that to me. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the additional information, Bill.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alderwoman. Alderman from the 16th, Alderman Oldenburg.
No questions at this time, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I ditto the Alderwoman from the 5th Ward. And Matt, I'm still waiting on a response from when you had sent out in regards to the awards of the contracts. And so I'm still waiting on a response from your office in regards to that.
In terms of, say that again, Alderwoman.
You all had sent out, my concern is you all had sent out a list of who was awarded contracts in regards to the CDA funding. And my question was, it seems like it was lopsided. And most of the people that received those fundings were organizations that's already been funded, have been funded double time, and it was mostly South. There was no non-for-profits in the North Quarter. And so that's my one question. My second question, during this pandemic, how are you making sure that we get those people, the North Quarter CDCs, are able to be educated to get those grants from that funding?
Okay, if I may, Alderwoman, I think I know what you're referring to now. You're actually referring to it was a April NOFA, Notice of Funding Availability for Housing, Construction and Rehabilitation. It got delayed because of COVID into late May. And then ultimately we judged the applications in June and July. I think this is what you're referring to, so just stop me if I'm wrong. Of that CDBG and home money that we use to award to developers to do low and moderate income housing in the city, it was roughly $6.8 million was the total NOFA award. At some point we were asked, and we calculated, we're always looking at what we're going to do in distressed neighborhoods. I mean, that's our charge. We need to be functioning in low to moderate income neighborhoods as a rule, and to the tune of 70% of the money we receive is at a minimum. I'll get into this a little later today, but we're actually for 2021 operating at 92% of our money going to low and moderate income neighborhoods. But I want to get back to that. But I think what you're referring to is the NOFA. And again, that is a process where we issue essentially an RFP to the community, and all the elected officials get it, basically saying we're soliciting proposals in housing production and rehabilitation area. And we did that in April. Ultimately, we issued the awards. I want to say it was late July, maybe, before we did because of COVID. But there was some pushback on the awards that we gave because the general feeling was there wasn't enough awarded on the north side of the city. And there was also money awarded to sort of like, I think what you're referring to as, the usual suspects that come in and ask us for money and do development. So regarding the north side, south side piece, I mean, we put forth the spreadsheet, and I thought that was provided to you, but I certainly can provide it to you, that showed that upwards of 60% of our money on the NOFA was strictly north of Del Mar. So, in matter of fact, and I've talked to the new Alderwoman Evans, I saw her in the call earlier, of the $6.8 million that we did award on that NOFA, 1.1 million and change went into the 4th Ward. So, we feel like we're being very equitable in the distribution of the money. And we're very, I don't know how to say it, we're very conscious of that. I mean, there's no way while I'm sitting here anyway, that the north side isn't going to be addressed pursuant to our mandate from HUD, but also pursuant to, my sense of what we need to be doing in our community. And that's exactly what I intend to do. On the other point, though, there's no question that we see certain developers that come to us for NOFA funding that are very good at what they do. I mean, they submit excellent proposals. They are working in the right parts of town, like I just went through, but we have to judge the proposals in our mind as to which ones we believe will ultimately be, successful, that will go to completion, so that we can get the money out the door and we actually create something good, as opposed to projects that don't have a very good application and it appears the funding sources aren't in place and different things, and they may fail. I mean, we have to make those calls, and I think we do a pretty good job of making those calls. But I have received, and you're mentioning it today, so I just want to touch on it. There are some CDC, Tabernacle comes to mind. They actually reached out to me about their application on the NOFA. And I helped them essentially improve their gave them some suggestions to improve their application. And they're part of our award. They're part of our award process that you have before you today. We're going to award on the Tabernacle CDC project. That was not a project that we awarded in our NOFA in the spring because, frankly, the application wasn't very good. I was very clear with certain people in that organization about what they needed to do. But when they did it, we awarded it. And it's before you today. So, I mean, I just don't know how to really, we have training that we do for people to do our NOFA applications that we provide to the community and developers to try to assist them on how to make a good application to us, how to secure your other modes of funding and do different things so that we can move forward with your project. Some don't make the grade, and I mean, it just sort of the nature of the beast, I guess. The projects are very competitive. The money's very competitive. But I guess I go back to my first point, Alderwoman Boyd, which is regardless of the quality of the developer and the application, I consider it my charge to make sure that the proper amount of investment goes into the poorest or low to moderate income portions of the city. And I will always do that.
And then on the facade piece, it has been a total turmoil for the last 3 years. I mean, turmoil, literally. I have businesses that are hanging by the threads that were waiting on funding, and then they come back and they say, well, no, we have to start all over. Then they go back and then they say, well, that person's not there, so now we got to start again. And so it's frustrating to the businesses. And so I did bring that to Otis Williams' attention, that this is concerning to me, because I try to make sure that the businesses that are qualified can get what they need. But when you keep coming back to them and keep having them repeat over and over again, it gets frustrating to them. And so then they get discouraged. So they don't believe in the system of the city, because they feel like the city is just messing them around and not giving what they promised them to. So Lisa Aggie, I give her praise, because she's been trying to work with that. And we kept hearing they're working with 18 and 19. And so now you have people that apply for 20, and they're like, so they'll never get to us because they haven't did 18 and 19. So it's just kind of frustrating in the whole process. And it's a turmoil with the facade piece. And you have people at the table that's trying to work it, those business managers, and they're pulling their hair out because it's changing daily. So I'm asking that you all need to clear that up, because it's discouraging to the small businesses and to your staff that you have there. That's not fair to those people, because they think one thing and the next day they come in, it's a whole different process. So I just really think that's unfair to them, and they're trying to make something that should be nice for the small business, and it's not able to happen.
Alderwoman, thank you. I don't know if you were on earlier, but I actually talked quite a bit about the Neighborhood Commercial District Program, the facade program, which is what you're referring to.
Right.
And I know exactly what you're talking about. I mean, when I came aboard here, it was waiting. There was a problem, huge problem that was waiting for me. And I feel like we took care of it mainly in 2019 in terms of getting the 18-19 money moving, but then we had COVID in 20, which set us back. There's no question. I mean, I can't speak for SLDC on it. I mean, they carry out the program, but I can speak for CDA. And there were some obstacles and fingers being pointed our way as well about things that weren't moving. And I made a priority to clear that out. I'm not happy about the fact that people who have 2018 projects are still waiting to complete their projects. It makes me very angry and it keeps me up at night. But I will say that I think we have cleared the hurdle with that program that we need to clear. There's no more excuses for that program. And these projects can now move. So, we're going to see how it does over the next year or so, but the obstacles are out of the way now, and these projects are going to move, whether they're current projects or whether they're projects from 18. I understand the frustration of the business. I mean, I've heard it firsthand. I'm hearing it from you today. I totally get it. It was a mess, to be honest. But I think that we've gotten through the obstacles, the impediments, and the finger pointing, and we're finally on our way to being able to fund and improve in the neighborhood commercial district projects area. And, I'm hopeful. Again, as I said earlier today, I'm going to judge it over the next year or so, whether or not it's actually going to be a success or not. I'm hopeful. I don't really want to, I don't really have anything else to say about that on a call other than to say if there are individual business owners and people that you come into contact with who claim that CDA is the problem, I'd like to hear from you about those. I don't think that's true, but I'd like to hear from you about those.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Okay. We do have some members not on the committee, and just out of time consciousness, we still have a lot of bills on several bills on the agenda that we need to deal with. I'm going to go ahead and let Mr. Moak finish his presentation, come back to the full committee, let them go through it, and then we'll start recognizing some of the people some of the aldermen not on the committee. I'm not ignoring you. I'm just trying to move this along a little faster. Go ahead, Mr. Moak. You want to go ahead and continue?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to share a couple more documents. I'm not long here before I'm going to wrap this up. So let me share a couple more documents with you briefly. I think you will find them interesting. Give me a minute. Where is it? This isn't actually the document that I'm looking for. I have another, I'll just refer to it. Hang on, I'm sorry. So this document on the left, you all will recognize it should have been provided to you with your materials, but of course it's also Exhibit A to the board bill itself. It is too lengthy to go through each of the individual entities. I hope that you would do so on your own. A lot of these entities that we're funding, and this is a public service area where we have the cap, $3.5 million and change.
Right.
They're all programs that address public services needs in the city of St. Louis. And I'm scrolling down through them to get to the bottom, but I hope that you will take a good look at those. We had 12 new programs this year. And then we had, I believe it was 30 existing programs that most of you are familiar with that are return awardees from last year. And we have 12 new programs as well. Again, these were obtained through proposals, $8 million worth of proposals submitted to us in August pursuant to a RFP. And we went through those proposals, rated them, and then decide on the awards that you see. So here on the third page of that document, the exhibit, there you see it at the bottom, the public services cap. Again, 3541787. And 19% of our total award plus the 200,000 program income equals that number. And that is the number that we obviously went up to the penny on our awards under public services, but we cannot exceed that number. There you see the LRA program that we talked about earlier. Below that, under interim assistance, essentially the document I went through with you before that showed the above the line going from 18 million down to 14 million, where the programs going from 18 million above the line through the 14 million and then down to the amount available for competitive proposals are all reflected on Exhibit A, but they're broken out a little differently. And so there's no reason to get confused with the numbers other than to say that at the bottom of the document, when all is said and done, there's your $18 million total in CDBG funding again in the middle column. The $3 million at the right is home money. We haven't talked about that, but that essentially is money used again in housing production and for some home repair. And that is additional money. We received 2.9 million. That's our estimate for this year. And then we have 100,000 left over from last year in program income, bringing it to 3 million. And we add essentially to make the total amount of money that we're going to spend. You take the 3 million plus the 18,626 and you come to the total there. Heading on down, again, we've talked about this already, but I just highlighted a little bit here. Our calculations on the Cda Cap, which we basically brought to zero on the admin cap, and we're spending that amount. That's limited to 20% of the total grant. Here's your public service cap. There's your home allocation at 3 million. Home also allows for 10% admin, which would be 300,000. We do not spend any home money on administration at CDA. All the money goes into housing production and healthy home repair projects. Coming on down with the number, you'll recognize these from earlier. Here's our 70% allocation. 70% of the money we receive from HUD has to be dedicated to low and moderate income areas or individuals. That number in our case this year would be 10,431,110. However, right below that, you'll see I added up the public services, the other assistance that benefits low and moderate income areas and individuals, and the total of 13,851,586 to benefit low and moderate income individuals and areas is actually 92.95% of our total award, subject to that calculation, subject to the AMI calculation. I have another, I'm having trouble with my share screen. I have another map that talks about the NRSAs. I guess I can't seem to get to it for whatever. Let me see if I can do this right here. Ah, I got it. Just briefly on this. Most of you are familiar with this. This is something HUD mandated back, I want to say 2015, 16 or so it started. This is a map of the city showing what is called the neighborhood revitalization strategy areas, or NARSAs, as they like to be called. And these are areas HUD designated around 2015, 16 as particularly in need of federal assistance. It's the best way to say it. So what we have done at CDA is we have granted extra points when we rate the proposals that came in August for public services, for housing, whatnot. we grant extra points to entities that apply that are either located in the Narcissus or are doing activities in the Narcissus. And I say this because it's just part of our mental process right now at CDA to getting money out the door and to try to focus on the area. All the areas in the city need help, but some even more help. And this is the essentially a template we use to award money by basically issuing bonus points to entities operating or located in these areas. You see down here in Dutchtown, there's a southeast. This doesn't show up very good on the map. That is a proposed NARSA. It's never been finalized by HUD. We do award not as many points, but some bonus points for entities located or operating in this area as well, although not to the degree that we award in the choice North Central, Northwest, and North NARSA neighborhoods. One more thing, and then I'll wrap up. This is a full, you should have this from yesterday as part of your materials. And this is what I've been sharing today, just at the bottom. And I go back to this because I just want to touch briefly on how it all kind of wraps up together. But you see that available for competitive proposals 3733-787. These are proposals that we received through the RFP, and they consist of subcategories, which you have in your Exhibit A, and you also have in this document that you can review. But essentially the way it breaks out is economic development programs represent 365,000 of that number. Housing programs, not housing production, housing repair, but other housing programs that we use through Harambee or Mission St. Louis represents 730,000 of that number. Public services themselves represent $2,286,787 of that number, and public improvements, meaning building things in the community, are 352,000 of that number. The total of those four categories of applications is 3733-787. The other part, and I will conclude, is again looking at the cap itself. For public services, it consists of the public services I just mentioned of $2,286,707 in competitive proposals, as well as above the line or internal public services of $1,255,000. And that number again comes to that total of 3541787. The above the line public service programs that total into that, in addition to the competitive proposals, are the elderly services from SLAY, Operation Brightside, the expanded recreation program, and the problem property program. That's how the numbers fit together between Exhibit A and the other, and this document that we're looking at. They're essentially, they're replicas of each other, if you will. But between those two documents, the numbers match, but they're broken out differently. And so that's where we are. That's the full allocation for 21. I will say to the committee before we take more questions, as most of you know, HUD requires us to submit our proof of annual appropriation to them at least 45 days before the end of our program year. The end of our program year is December 31. So essentially you count back on that to November 16, and HUD has to have our appropriation signed by the mayor by that date. I mention it because I'm not trying to rush this, but it's something where when we need to get through the other readings with the board bill and whatnot, I'm hoping to come out of committee today so that we can meet that deadline. And with that, I'll stop and certainly take any questions you all may have.
Okay. Alderman Boyd, do you have any additional questions?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Matt, for all the hard work that you do. one of my biggest questions is how are we aligned with the 5-year plan according to the recommended allocations?
I think we're in good shape on that. You know, we did the consolidated plan last year, Alderman, as you know, and we didn't adjust too much on that from the prior year. 5-year plan was 2014 to 19. But we did adjust a little bit. For example, one of the things we included for over the next 5 years is looking hard at transportation in our city. It's not the highest priority on the consolidated plan, but it is one of the priorities. And so we included that. That was new to us last year. Otherwise, I mean, our emphasis remains in economic development, public services, public improvements, to a certain extent, assistance to homeless, not to a large extent because we leave that to human services, but to a certain extent, and you'll see that in the programs and the description of the programs that you have before you on the Excel spreadsheet, some money dedicated to that as well. I think we're very well aligned with that. And going forward, I feel very comfortable with that.
Okay, can you provide the committee with a matrix that shows that alignment based on the recommended allocation?
Yeah, I can do that. I mean, it would be essentially be the programs or the amounts that we talked. The program.
No, I understand that, but I'm talking about a graphic. You know, if there was a pie chart, a bar chart that, you know, showed arrows where everything fell into the buckets of the allocations according to the plan.
Yeah, no, and I can get you something that's a little more chart-like, I guess, okay. And that's fine. But I think what, you know, the categories we talk about today, economic development, public services, public improvements, are all categories in the consolidated plan. And then the consolidated plan, of course, talks to them in terms of priorities, high priority, medium priority, low priority, et cetera. But yeah, we ought to be able to provide something like that. It's more like a chart that shows how we're spending our money. And I think that's what you're after.
Okay, let's go back to transportation. Did we allocate something for transportation? And
not yet, not yet. And it's just, again, I mention it because it was new to our consolidated plan going forward. And Alderman Rhodey and I and Scott Ogilvie talked a little bit about what we might do in the transportation area. What would we be able to fund in that area for low and moderate income individuals or areas to assist? But honestly, Alderman, it's not concrete enough at this point. I don't have a funding entity. I don't have a study that is being necessarily on the table yet that I could fund yet, but we're talking about it, and I would like to do something on that in the next year or so.
Sure, and just my personal commentary, I'm not sure that I personally would support transportation in the Cdbg allocation when we have the economic development tax that we pass that has transportation dollars in it. And I just think that in light of COVID-19 and how, you know, a lot of cities are struggling with revenues that using Cdbg, when we could potentially use a different pot of money, you know, maybe a better application of those funds. So I just want to put that out there. I also want to say that I want to talk about facade for a minute. And I want to preface my comments by saying that without sounding arrogant, that I am probably one of the most experienced aldermen at the Board of Aldermen when it comes to block grant funding. I have served as executive director of the Urban League Revitalization Program in the 90s. I served as a director of the city of Ferguson for their block grant allocation. And I have seen the city move in a very good direction as far as how we administer our block grant funds. I'm happy that, you know, aldermen are not involved in the facade allocation that we used to be involved in. But I'm also disappointed that aldermen don't seem to have a lot of input on organizations that may need to be funded, because we probably know our communities better than than CDA may know our communities, or HUD, I should say, not CDA, but Vanessa, the HUD. And so I want to share with you my experience with the facade program, because I've been alderman 17 years and it had been a broken program for quite some time. We started getting back on track, I think a couple of years ago, but unfortunately the director that was hired, something happened, the person is not there, and the program have just, been in shambles, unfortunately, but we were on the right track. And I respect and I understand that, we have money over there that we haven't spent, so why could, fund more? I get that, and I support that. I would really hope that we can fix the program. I think it's a great program, and it helps a lot of mom and pop shops in neighborhoods in the community that I serve. Full disclosure, through a company that I own, my wife and I are recipient of facade improvement of $40,000, but it's a loan, a 15-year, meet all the requirements, and it may be forgiven, but sell the property, do some things, is paid back. And so I'm excited that came out during my treasurer's race, and I was penalized, demonized, and just thrown through the mud on the fact that how dare somebody as an elected official would take advantage of a program as a taxpayer that other developers would take advantage of, however, are unwilling to come into a community such as mine. I took the risk of buying a dilapidated building and financing a fortune of my own money and loans to rehabilitate it. And the $40,000 that I got as a loan was pennies compared to what we've invested and continue to need to invest in this property to make it a valuable property. Now, let me tell you about the process, because I think the process that I use, could be a model. And again, I'm not trying to be arrogant. I'm not trying to think that I know everything, but in full transparency as an elected official, I thought it was very important that if I participated in a program as this, that it should be known to the public as much as possible. So not only were there the public notices legally that need to be published, but I invited all the businesses that could potentially qualify for the facade program in my community. And I had the meeting at my facility, and I had the director of CDA, and I had other city officials, the facade program manager, and the facade, the director of the facade program here. And then we were encouraging small businesses to participate. And there's a sign-in sheet within the file somewhere, and less than half of the people applied. Now, why is that? It's because, as you said earlier, a lot of people apply for home repair. You don't have any idea if they qualify or not, right? Until their name is called and you start saying, I need this, and that. And so in the home repair program, you start saying, well, your taxes got to be up to date. You got to have insurance. You got to have this. They fall off. Am I right or wrong, Matt?
Yeah, no, that happens.
So the facade program is similar. So you have small businesses that want to participate, but they have issues that for whatever reason, they cannot overcome those issues to take advantage of the program. Now, that's not an indictment on the program, okay? That's an issue with the small business. And it certainly wouldn't be fair that a business is behind in taxes, whether it's to the collective revenue or real estate taxes, that we would give them a grant to pay their taxes and then include that in the rehabilitation of the property. So there are things that as property owners, whether you're that owner of a house that needs home repair, or you a business owner of property that could take advantage of the facade program, we have self-responsibilities. We have things that we need to do to qualify. Am I right?
Yes, you are correct.
Okay, so I just want to put it out there because I want the world. I mean, I want everybody in Germany, in the city of St. Louis, all the haters, all the people that denigrated me, that talked about me. In fact, in spite of the fact that my wife and I have put hundreds of thousands of dollars in a failing building to bring it back, because nobody has the courage to come into my community and do what we are doing. Will not apologize for that. And yes, I took advantage. Everybody understand what I'm saying. I took advantage of the St. Louis Facade Program to benefit not only myself, but my community. Because this huge 18,000 square foot building in 2025 could easily be demolished by the city of St. Louis because it had no care. So I know that program, and I like that program, and I want that program to remain in place, because that program can really help people that I represent. So I would hope that we do our due diligence, and maybe this is a call to Otis Williams, which I have a lot of respect for, because he's the head of SLDC, to do whatever we need to do to get the personnel in place to make that program a first-class program, because it's truly needed. Some of the issues are business owners, for whatever reason, they can't get the 2 or 3 bids. So that's an impediment. They don't really know how to connect and talk to contractors. So we need to look at what is discouraging our mom and pop shop business owners from participating in that program, and how can we better assist them without compromising the program. I think that's important, because as bureaucrats, I understand how easy it is to say, this is just the way we do it, 1, 2, 3, 4. And we've always done it that way for 20 years. And, sorry, if you don't go out and get your 3 bids, then there's nothing I can do. And I'm thinking that, maybe sometime we can go a little bit beyond what we traditionally do. So I want to put that out there, and I want to be a savior of that program. I don't want to see it go away. It's easy for it to slip through the cracks because it didn't meet your expectations, Matt. And certainly I understand that you wanted to meet your expectations, okay? And I heard that. And so I just want to be a champion for that program. And again, put it out there that if you have a problem with me taking advantage of the facade program, too bad. I'm a taxpayer, and I'm proud to serve my community, and I'm proud to invest in my community when nobody else seems to be investing in my community. So with that, I said that my piece. Now, let's also talk about Preservation Square, which is not in my ward, but I'm jealous of the fact that there's this phenomenal opportunity for the 5th Ward in a community that desperately needs this development opportunity. However, there seems to be miscommunication with the alderperson of that ward and the community at large. And that doesn't make for good partnerships. And I heard you say that the project is too big to fail. But I think that if people feel that they're disrespected, if people feel that they don't have value, if people feel that somebody's just going to come in and do whatever they want to do, so what? Let it fail. I'm just giving you a perspective of somebody that would be deeply rooted in a community, because one of the things we should not do is dictate and tell a community what they will accept. That's not the process, and that's inconsistent with what I know about the rules and regulations of the Community Development Block Grant Funds. So this is just commentary. I don't expect you to respond, because I know there's a lot of other people that may have something to say, but I think it's important to revisit that process. And if it fails, shame on HUD, shame on the developer, shame on everybody who was unwilling to listen to the leadership within that community. And so I just want to say that, in support of my colleague, from the 5th Ward. So also, there's this big talk about defunding, closing the workhouse, Matt. And some of my anxieties with that is, if we close the workhouse, have we put systems in place that will keep people from the recidivism rate low, that will keep you from going back into the workhouse. And with the block grant funding, I know we're funding different agencies that can do that. Plumbing Connections, Big Brothers and Big Sisters. I mean, I don't have the chart, up right now, but I would love to have a report that's based on those services only that can help minimize the amount of people that we have to put in the workhouse or the justice system. Because I wonder sometimes if we're not taking advantage of different financial resources, whether it's block grant or whatever pots of money that we have to support that process. Because I'm not for just closing the workhouse, because I think it's a great thing to do. Hell, let's not just close the workhouse, let's close the Justice Center too. If you want to get out the business, let's do both. But I think we have to be practical. I think we have to leverage every pot of funding that we have to make the city work as functionally and as efficient as possible for all our citizens for public safety reasons, period. And so I'm interested in knowing what are the success stories of all those organizations that we support that can help keep people out of the prison population. Okay.
Sure. We do quite a bit. I'm sorry, Alderman, but we do quite a bit in the reentry programs and whatnot. And yeah, I mean, we certainly support programs that try to reduce recidivism. So,
and maybe we're not doing
right.
Maybe we can do a better job. And maybe there are some organizations that have to fall off, because I know there are some organizations we've been funding for 10 years easily. Yeah. And at some point, maybe, we need to say, hey, look, if we look at our priorities, they don't make the matrix anymore for whatever reason. And we're funding some organizations that are multi-million-dollar organizations. Yeah. Okay. And I know it's easy to accept and fund organizations that have the infrastructure in place that we know will probably be successful. Going back to what you said about developers, and somebody submitted the application and they just didn't have, the capacity that you thought that would make it successful. I love McCormick and Barron. It's easy to give them all the money, but there are other smaller organizations out there we might be able to fund that could be a McCormick and Barron one day. So let's not always take the easy road out, and let's figure out how we can grow the capacity of smaller organizations, which transitions me into community-based development organizations, the CUBDOs. And so being here 17 years, before HUD came in and said the aldermen are too close, we had the CUBDOs in our community that were advocates for our community, that were doing housing development. Ruby West Florissant is one of them. Hamilton Heights Neighborhood Organization. I mean, there's several. And I'm just talking about ones that I'm, more intimately. And then with the new structure and the new rules with HUD and the new regulation that we created, they fell out the system. Yeah. And we miss them. And instead of allowing them to fall out the system, I wonder if we could have worked with them over a period of time to increase their capacity, whereby they could be a valuable organization that people could be proud of, and HUD could be willing to support traditionally as they've done in the past. And I think when people are giving you money, it's kind of hard to push back and say, I hear what you're saying. I don't want to change what I'm doing because it's working over here. As bureaucrats, again, when it comes to bureaucracy, it's easy to just yield to the rules that's been established. But as an Army guy that, understand rules and regulations, there was always waivers for certain things because everybody didn't fit that profile. Every community is not the same. What they can do in Tower Grove is not the same thing that they can do in Hamilton Heights or Wells Goodfellow. So I think that if we create a better partnership, this is just my thought, with HUD to appeal to them that we need CUBDOs back. We need organizations back in our distressed neighborhoods that can really make a difference. And what would that look like? And how can we satisfy the requirement whereby they will be okay with that? I think we need to really revisit that.
Oh, HUD threw us asunder when they came in and separated the process. Let's face it. I mean, I'm not exactly a fan of the way they separate the process, but we're still adjusting.
Yeah,
I mean,
and some of it was for the greater good, though.
Yeah.
Some of it was for the greater good. I'm going to admit that, because I didn't like being, as alderman, I did not like being intimately involved in the process where I decide who gets facade money or who gets this, and because it was not a good situation, because then you get criticized on, well, if you ain't a friend of the alderwoman of the 20th ward, you'll never get home repair. If you're not, friends of the alderwoman of the 4th ward, you won't get, development, or the 19th ward and the 20th, and that's not fair. So taking the alderman out of the process, I think it was a good thing. However, I think we still have value in our suggestions and recommendations. And the last thing I'm going to end with is, it's real interesting that HUD had a problem with the alderman being too involved in the process. But when you look at your block grant allocation, and that we are allocating block grant money for City of St. Louis departments like Parks and Recreation and the drug court, and so the administration, this is not, and my comment is not an indictment on whoever the mayor is, but please don't tell me that the mayor would not have influence on whether Parks and Recreation got $200,000 or the city council's office didn't get $500,000 for the problem property. That wouldn't make any sense to me. There's no logic in the mayor not having influence in that. And so the alderman having quote unquote influence on whether CUBDOs in our community got funding is no different to me. So I say that in all commentary, Matt. I'm not, chastising you. I'm cool. I'm a team player. I want to help make a process right. And I want to offer myself to SLDC and how maybe they can make the facade program, a better program. So I'll end with that. Thank you.
On the facade program, Alderman, just briefly, I'm a fan too. I mean, it's an extremely cool concept, but I don't have to tell you, when I got here, it was a mess.
Right.
You know that. And I also think the other, and so we spent a lot of time on a CDA trying to fix something that frankly was being carried out in another part of the city. But that said, the other thing that's happening, of course, I've talked to Otis about this, is he's reorganizing that entire group of people based on the equitable economic development plan. So there's some room for discussion about how NCD will go forward. And perhaps you should be a part of that, which is what, I think would be great.
I'll be more than happy. So I put that out there publicly. I would, love to lend my support, my expertise on how we can think about reimagining how it could, better serve our community.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Okay. Alderman, I just want to say one thing about the transportation, and let me, we've been kind of doing some analysis on our different tax abatement programs, particularly with regard to commercial areas and office buildings. And I guess my thinking is that we're taking a look at how much we're subsidizing.
I don't know if you know, we can't see you right now.
Oh. Forgive me, Alderman. We've been doing some analysis on our tax, on our incentive program, particularly for office buildings and places that have a high concentration of parking. And when you go through it, there's a great deal of the subsidy that goes into office buildings actually goes into the parking garages. And the way I believe is the correct way of looking or doing that analysis is to, attribute in essence all of the subsidy to the parking garage and then start calculating what the cost per parking space is. And I've asked Jonathan to review some of our projects, but I believe when we get into it, what we'll find is that we're using our incentives in essence to subsidize structured parking, which we knew we were doing that. It's just that, in order to have a really viable and competitive, office environment in our denser areas, we have to think about how we're going to be able to reduce that parking subsidy, and you start breaking it out by a parking spot, and we're in essence using tax abatement or TIF or whatever to subsidize somebody driving their car to work. And, you know, if you break that out on a per month basis, I'm pretty sure we're subsidizing that at a higher rate than what a transit pass would cost. And so we began thinking about the whole idea of how do we go ahead and begin transferring or reducing the subsidy to parking, and is there a way that we can begin thinking about shifting that to, you know, that subsidy in essence, you know, instead of somebody driving their car to work, is there a way that we can encourage them to take some sort of shared transportation? And that's kind of the essence of that, and that's why I've been trying to, you know, we thought that might be an interesting thing to begin taking a look at, and maybe creating a transit pass in essence that might have a, you know, an income guideline to it or something that might subsidize the cost of transit for lower income residents. So that's
and I think that's a great opportunity. But again, Mr. Chairman, I wonder if we could not leverage the resources with the economic development tax to accomplish the same goal that you're interested in versus using the CDBG money, in which I think that if we stop funding city agencies, we will have more money to put out in the neighborhoods for development opportunities.
Well, this was I think we're conceptualizing, and we haven't really gotten very far on it at all, Alderman. We've been bouncing a few ideas around, but the thought would be is I feel like I've had a big component of much of the success in my ward has been its proximity to the Metrolink, and we have a high level of, you know, high concentration of jobs there. Is there a way that we could figure out how we can better link some of the neighborhoods, particularly on the near north side, to where the jobs are, and start thinking about how strategies to reduce car ownership in those neighborhoods or decrease car dependency. And we bounced around a couple ideas, and I don't know if it's planning or what we're going to do, but certainly we haven't gotten very far on it. I don't think we're talking about a great deal of money out of block grant. It was done on a very, very preliminary basis. And you know, you're right, it's probably more appropriate if we're going to do some large scale program to do that in the with the transportation funds. But more and more affordable housing and transportation, the planning of that stuff is occurring, you know, concurrently, I guess. So I'll be glad. Why don't we talk offline, and hopefully we can involve the Alderwoman from the 19th in this discussion as well.
Thank you.
Given that's her committee, I don't want to take up everybody's time. The next speaker would be the Alderwoman from the 19th. Alderwoman, do you have any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a few things I'd like to touch on briefly. The first thing is our home repair waiting list. And Matt, I don't know if anybody has ever thought about it, but we should have some kind of pre-screening process versus people just sitting on a waiting list for a year or 2 years. And we don't even know if they're even close to a qualification, and or if there is some pre-screening, we could identify things that they need to get in order early. So when you do get to the full application process, they're more prepared. And so it's just something I want to just throw out there for us to think about. And maybe that could help move that process along.
If you'd like, I could have Bill address what we're currently doing, because I don't want to try to speak to it without specificity.
Oh, I do. And then that's why I said I'm just putting it out there for your consideration, and we can talk about it later on. My next thing is, I do know with the facade program, a lot of the new structure that's going to take place with the new economic development plan, hiring specific planners for each ward and all that, will take into this process being a little bit smoother. And so it's just kind of sad because there's so much going on at once, but it's hard for us to be up to date with the information because it's not like every time you have a meeting, we're getting a synopsis. So it's normally once it's done, if you figured it out, then we're told. So it leaves us kind of in a state of flux and usually in a position to be complaining unnecessarily. So I don't know if that's something that could be considered too.
Yeah,
maybe we can get some kind of reports that are minimal, but at least lets us know what direction you're going.
Again, I'm hoping that program gets back up and running in a way that helps our city. And I'm optimistic for it. I am. But, you know, I'm also, well, I'm in wait and see mode.
Okay. Well, my last thing is for those who have been around a while, you know that we have had large failures with HUD projects. And sometimes they do have to fail and be totally restructured. I hope that is not the case for the alderperson of the 5th Ward, but I think it's time now for all of us to come to the table and help with the knowledge that we all have from being involved in these projects in different positions. And I'll give you an example of 2. One turned out okay, and one totally failed. And so the original King Louis Square HUD allocation and the grantee failed, and it had to be totally restructured, and it was actually awarded to somebody different. And so large projects sometimes have large problems, and we have to go back and figure it out. So that was a total failure in the beginning, King Louis Square. But we also had some problems with the O'Fallon Y. But most especially for the minority aldermen sitting there, you know, we all came to the rescue, and it was a group process along with some other technical assistance to get it back on track and make sure that it was successful. So it requires a lot of input, and I think it's time to all of us to get on board and help with that project. And a lot of people don't like to be told what to do, but sometimes we need to pull it apart and figure it out, make it happen.
Sometimes I don't like the federal government telling me what to do, but I find myself.
Oh, I know that too well, okay? Because you got to remember, I actually worked on the King Louis Square once it was reallocated, and know the headaches there from going from a failure to a success. And then the Renaissance project here in the 19th Ward, I think so far that might have been the largest one. It is an incredible process, and you are going to have some problems along the way, but everybody has to pitch in and help. So I just want to say to my colleague in the 5th Ward, I do understand your frustration from a number of different perspectives, and I am more than willing, if you want it, to come to the table and help.
I appreciate
it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Alderwoman Hubbard.
No further questions.
Alderwoman Spencer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Moak, if you don't mind, I had a question. I wanted to go back to the allocations. I looked through the handouts, and the slide that you had screen shared earlier wasn't in the folder. It would be helpful maybe if you could share that one. I specifically wanted to look at allocation for the nuisance program.
Oh, okay. And so by nuisance, you mean the problem property team program, Alderwoman? Yeah. And that's fine. I'm certainly willing to share this spreadsheet. I thought you had it. Unfortunately,
we do.
Oh, okay, okay.
Mr. Mo, there's one, there is a spreadsheet in the handouts, but the presentation that you shared earlier was not in there. If you don't mind, it just kind of showed the difference between allocation of last year and this year, and it was all clearly broken out.
Right.
Can you share that screen again real quick, or maybe just email that over, or just describe the different, what we're funding as far as the nuisance program goes?
Yeah, sure. Hang on. I can share it again. That's easy.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
It might just simply have not gotten uploaded. Who knows?
Yeah, that's fine.
Is that?
Obviously, I don't have to tell you that I was involved in this program for a little while. And we originally, so I think you were referring to there is the 215,000 for this year.
Let's see. Okay, yeah, this might be at the bottom. I wasn't aware of where we were in the.
Yeah, sorry, scrolling way down to the bottom. Yes.
How many, is this the entire funding for the problem properties team?
No, it is not. And the only reason I know that, of course, I used to run it. So the grant has never been above 300,000. I mean, the CDBG funding has never been above 300,000 for the problem property program. But it did begin there back when I started, 2002. And I would think it was roughly 280,000. I think it was 279, if I remember right. At that time, 279 basically funded the 3 people, including myself, that were in that unit. Ultimately, that unit grew to about 14 people, but the funding never increased from CDBG. It was always roughly 270, 280. When the recession hit, I guess the real estate recession, and city employees were being furloughed and whatnot, I assume CDBG ran into problems too. Our funding was cut down to around the number you see on the screen, 209,000. It's been at 209,000 for, oh man, I don't know, at least 10 years.
That's, excuse me, just from my understanding, that's through the CBG.
That's just the CDBG piece, but it's been at roughly this number till we gave it a little raise this year for, at least 10 years. But it also receives other funding, Alderwoman, and I mean to the tune of quite a bit of public safety funding. I think it comes from a graduated business tax that funds the problem property program. Mm-hmm. And also, there for a long, long time, we didn't use a single dollar of general revenue. I remember being very proud of that back in the day. It's hard for me to speak to exactly what funds are being used now to run that program, but there are at least 2 other funds that feed the problem property program in addition to CDBG.
Got it.
And okay. Of course, the 14 people that we maxed out at roughly 2010, and we were really effective around that time, there's half of that staff in that unit at the time. I don't know the exact number, but it's dramatically different. Yep.
And that's all that pertains to the community development block grant money. So
right.
I can save
I'd say we're about a fourth of their funding in total.
Yeah. So, but this figure, the roughly $250,000's been pretty consistent.
Yes, it has. I'd say that 209 number has been there for about 10 years.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the additional clarification, Matt. This might have been up there. It just wasn't something I found when I was looking.
Thank you, Alderwoman. We have Alder. I missed Alderman Coder. I'm sorry. Alderman Coder, did you have any questions? Did I miss?
Judge, no questions. That's there. Sorry. Chairman, no questions. I'm fine over here.
That's a good one, Alderman.
Yeah, I got promoted to a judge.
Okay. Yeah, Judge. Hello, Judge, Your Honor.
Alderman Oldenburg.
No, thank you, Mr. Moak, for your presentation this morning and answering all the questions and facilitating and doing what you do. I have no questions, Mr. Chairman.
Alderwoman Boyd.
No questions, Mr. Chair.
And finally, I guess that's it. So we can go to the full board. Does we have a number of members that are from the board that are not on the committee, and I'm kind of doing this is that it's hard to read from here, but Alderman Gunther, did you have any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No questions.
Alderwoman Glass, I see your name. Do you have any questions, Alderwoman? Alderwoman Glass? Okay. Alderwoman Ingracia?
No questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I'm not deliberately Alderwoman Navarro, did you have any questions?
No questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Alderwoman Hubbard?
No questions. Thank you.
Alderman Cohen? Alderman Cohen, any questions? Okay. I believe I've covered everyone now. If I've missed anybody, I'm sorry. Just let me know. I don't see anyone. Okay, if there are no other questions, the chair will entertain a motion on this. We frequently hold this if there's concern or provide additional time for discussion. We don't like to appear to be rushing anything, but unless someone has some objections, I'm willing to entertain a motion at this time.
Mr. Chair, could I ask a question, please?
Sure, absolutely.
Alderwoman Davis and Alderman Boyd has suggested that CDA connect with Alder people to be at the table to start looking at how we can do this whole process to make it more transparent. And so could we get a date or approximate day or when we would do this? I don't like us to say it and then nothing ever happens.
Why don't we go ahead and take a look at the Alder people who have volunteered to do that? Alderwoman Davis, is there something specific you'd like to?
Well, I think one of the things I had talked about is to have some periodic updates rather than waiting until something is finalized and then we find out about it. Right. Because a lot of times we could help early on in a process and not get to the end and then tear it apart and you got to start all over again.
Right.
And I really want to leave that up to Matt and SLDC needs to do the same thing. I'd like to leave it up to them to come with a format and then we can talk about it.
Sure. How about we do this? We do have certain deadlines that we're supposed to get this out. We can certainly hold it for if it's the will or the intent of the committee that we can hold this for a week until you get that scheduled, or we can go ahead and vote it out. And if we can't, I have always found Mr. Moak extremely accessible, so I would hope that we're able to find some time to meet with you all. But if between now and I guess not this Friday, but the following Friday, we have not been able to secure a date, we can certainly hold this on the floor for a week and make sure that we do. So,
Mr. Chairman, I'm not recommending to hold the bill. Okay. I just recommend that there's a process that I think we can improve upon, and we can do that later. But there's no reason to hold up the bill because we didn't have a lot of questions or any major concerns that said we need to hold up the bill. Okay.
Well, if there is no objection, then we'll go ahead and I'll entertain a motion to vote it out today. If for whatever reason you feel like you're not getting cooperation in the next 10 days or so, let me know. We can always hold it on the floor. Is that fair enough?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. With that, the chair will entertain a motion on the board bill.
I move that we adopt the 2021 CDB block grant allocation bill today. I don't know the bill number.
Is there a second?
Second. Board Bill 143 for the record.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there a request for previous roll?
Objection.
There's an objection to previous roll. Okay, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman,
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, what bill number is this again?
Board Bill 143.
I thought I heard 141, but okay, 143. I want to be clear. It's Board Bill 143. Aye.
Alderwoman Davis,
Aye.
Alderwoman Hubbard,
No.
Alderman Coder,
Aye.
Alderwoman Spencer,
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg, Alderwoman Boyd,
No.
Chairman Rhodey,
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg. 5 aye votes and 2 no votes.
Okay, by our vote, we've passed out of this committee a do pass recommendation for Board Bill number 143. Okay, why don't we go back up to this top? We'll try to work through these things in numeric sequence at this point. The next board bill is number 106, Alderman Coder's board bill for a redevelopment plan. Alderman?
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, thank you, Chairman. The Board Bill 106 is a, sorry, I'm on 2 Zooms here, is a redevelopment bill requesting tax abatement for a property on the landing owned by Advantage Development. If it's all right, I need to talk to this judge real fast. I'm going to defer to Dave Sweeney, who I believe is on the call and who represents Advantage. And I think maybe I'm not sure who else is available from Advantage to just explain the project and what they're planning.
Absolutely. Happy to, Alderman.
Proceed. Did he say Sweeney? Is Dave available?
I'm on, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Go ahead, proceed, Dave.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee. This is for a project down on the landing with Brian Mingus and David Mesner. They have made a significant investment and continue to do on the landing for various uses. On with me is Mr. Douglas Rasmussen, and Doug can kind of dig into the numbers and everything for questions on that, because this is kind of unique in that it's 2 buildings down on the landing that we're working with. Doug, I'll let you kind of just walk through the 2 projects and we'll kind of go from there, if that's right. If that's all right with you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, we like to have our own financial analysts walk through the findings. However, if you want to give an overview of the project, that's fine.
Yeah, absolutely. Doug will give the overview, and then we'll defer, as always, to Mr. Ferry on the model. But yeah, just to do the overview, if that's all right with you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Dave. So hi, I'm Doug Rasmussen. As Dave said, there's 2 buildings. They're actually located very adjacent to one another. One's called the Trader Building. It's at 801, 805 North 2nd Street. It's a 33,000 foot building with basically at Morgan and 2nd Street, and currently vacant. It'll have 3 retail and 7 commercial office stalls with about 28,000 square feet of space. That's the program for that one. And then the total project size is about 3.4 million. So that's Trader. And then the other one is called Payne Court Building, which is at 813 North 2nd Street. That's a smaller building. It's 13,067 square feet. And it's basically right at Laclete's Landing Boulevard and 2nd Street. Again, a redevelopment of a vacant Laclete's Landing building in a mixed-use project. And the plan there would be a little bit of housing in that one. There would be 10 units that are about 700, almost 700 square feet, with rents at about $1.63 square foot, and then the 3,000 square feet of retail. And that project has 2.4 million in total capital investment.
Okay. Mr. Ferry, Jonathan, are you available to share your screen and show us the numbers?
Shoot. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
So I'm on my phone, so I can't share my screen, unfortunately. I don't have.
Sure. We have the PowerPoint up. Give me 1 second.
There you go.
First scorecard's trader loss. Okay.
Okay. I see it. So members of the committee, thank you for your time today. So the first one I'm going to talk about is the Trader Loft building, which is the 801 to 805 North 2nd Street project. This project scores very well on our model. It gets 5 out of 5 as far as the project grade goes. We see that this project would hit the neighborhood sort of average within 1 year, and also its sustainable revenue target within 1 year. There's no TIF on this, so it's just a tax abatement, so that's why it's not applicable there in the TIF payoff year. The fiscal benefit to the city over 10 years from this project is estimated at about $3.4 million, with about just under $6.2 million over a 20-year span. To the school district, that'd be about $50,000 in revenue over 10 years and about $333,000 over 20 years. Relative to the neighborhood average, this building would exceed that by almost $2.7 million in the first 10 years for a property of this size, and 4.9 it exceeded by 4.9 million over that 20-year period, and that also would be an advantage to the school district of $39,000 over 10 years and $266 over the average over that period. The present value of this tax abatement, we estimate at $253,000, which represents about 7.3% of project costs. The developer's rate of return without the incentive is at 6.9%. The range, normal market range, we have from our data sources shows between 7.2 and 10.1, so it is below that range without incentives. And then it increases up to 7.8% with incentives. So it's still, inside the lower half of that range, and does not appear to be excessive. So again, it's 10 years at 90% tax abatement, and there are historic tax credits in this project amounting to almost $500,000 of a $3.4 million total project cost. Zach, do you guys want to ask questions on this one first, or you want me to do the second one since they're sort of combined bills?
Why don't you go ahead and do the second one as well?
Okay. So the second one is 813 North 2nd Street. This project also gets a passing score at 3.75 out of 5. It does not have the same level of density as the other building, and so it is a little bit comes in a little bit lower, but it still passes all on its own. The neighborhood average break even, it doesn't quite make it to the neighborhood average break even over the span of the project. As you can see, that benefit over neighborhood average, it falls short by about $53,000 over 10 years. It does sort of meet the break-even average by year 20, beating it by about $3,000. But in essence, it comes up shy on that metric. But it will generate still $293,000 total to the city over 10 years, or $587,000 over 20 years. It's $27,000 to the school district and $165,000 to the school district over 20 years. The present value of the incentive, this tax abatement, is estimated at $85,000, which is only 3.5% of the total project cost. This one is also getting a little over $500,000 in historic tax credits on a $2.4 million project. The rate of return we're estimating is even with the incentives below the low end of the normal market range. But I think this developer is seeing this project as sort of part of a district deal that will contribute to his overall returns in the long term. But I'll let them speak more to that if you have questions on that aspect of it. Yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions on.
Water dish should be cleaned out every day because box turtles like to soak in it.
Okay. Not sure what that was, but okay, let's go through the roll call real quick. Alderman Boyd, do you have any questions? Alderman Boyd. How about Alderwoman Davis?
I don't particularly have any questions. What I am interested in is the fact that I think we're going to finally get it right this time. For the 40 years that we've been trying to be successful on McLeod's Landing, having residential units there, it's going to really make a difference. So I do appreciate the project, and that's it for me, sir.
Oh gosh, I'm sorry, I'm gonna digress here a little bit. Brian Minges or David Mesner, I guess they are sponsors on the project. I didn't know if either one of them wanted to talk on its behalf.
Unfortunately, you're stuck with Doug and I today.
Right.
I apologize.
Okay, real lost. Okay. Alderwoman Hubbard.
No questions, Mr. Chairman. I do want to congratulate them on the project and just to let them know I'm definitely looking forward to my stretch of the landing, moving forward and just making us tie that whole venue space down there in residential and commercial wise. So I am definitely on board with whatever we're trying to do for our city's riverfront. And congratulations again on the project. That's it.
Thank you, Alderwoman.
Alderwoman Spencer, any questions?
I have no questions. I think looks like a great project. Congratulations to everyone involved.
And let's see, Alderman Oldenburg.
No questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Congratulations, and I'm glad to see the partnership that have spilled over to Tamika Hubbard's ward. So congratulations to you all, and I hope your best success for that project.
All right, there appears to be no other questions. If we would someone care to make a motion on this board bill?
I move that we adopt Board Bill 106 with a due pass recommendation.
Second.
Request previous roll. Well, no, rejection to previous roll. Sorry.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderwoman Davis.
Aye.
Alderwoman Hubbard.
Aye.
Alderman Coder.
Aye.
Alderwoman Spencer.
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg.
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
Chairman Rhodey.
Aye.
8 aye votes.
Thank you very much for your time, committee.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is board bill number 107.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman. This is all right, folks. And I'm not sure, Chairman, do you know, is anyone representing the developer on for Board Bill 107?
We have, I was provided a list of speakers that had previously registered with the clerk, and I have no names down for board bill number 107.
Okay, I think we'll be prepared to talk about it between Jonathan and me. You can see there on the screen the property at 505 Washington Avenue. It's actually, I think is the old Social Security office? I think it was a federal building at one point.
Missouri Unemployment.
Unemployment. Okay, and it was actually it's a fairly historic property, and pardon my ignorance for not knowing the exact style of architecture. Hopefully someone can enlighten us with that. But the architect is one of it's either the H or the O from HOK. It's a famous architect who was based here in St. Louis. As long as I've been at the board, this building's been vacant. It's a prominent corner, right at the corner of Washington and Broadway. And Dr. Dan Cook, who's rehabbed a number of properties in the downtown district, a number of sort of smaller commercial buildings, is tackling this project. I know he's seeking historic tax credits on it. I mean, everyone all the surrounding neighbors are very anxious for him to get started. We've been kind of staring at this eyesore and watching the windows get broken out over the years. You've got, the MAC on one corner, Stiefel right there. Bob Guller's building on the other corner he spent a lot of money on and really improved. So this is seeking a 10-year at 80% tax abatement. I don't know that he's got any commercial tenants lined up at this point, but I do believe he's financed and ready to go. I'm happy to answer questions, or we can just turn it over to Jonathan.
Jonathan, why don't you go ahead and jump in, and we'll just go one round of questions, try to save some time.
Sure thing. So this project at 505 Washington, I want to start by pointing out that normally we recommend projects that get at least a 3.5 out of 5 on our project grade, and this one gets 3.25 out of 5, so it is slightly below. And the reason for that ultimately comes down to the fact that this is a relatively small building in an area that is, when I say small, I mean it's not very tall. It doesn't have much density to it. It's only about 3 stories in an area that is generally much taller than this and much more dense, which means much more economic activity going on those properties. And as you guys know, the model that we've built is based essentially on efficiency of land use. So we're trying to utilize the city's land properly to generate enough tax revenue per square foot of land area in order to meet our budgetary objectives. So this project does fall short of what our model would indicate we would need on this project. We, in talking to the developer and to some others, the main reason why we are recommending going forward on this one is we did trim the abatement slightly down. I think originally he was at least at 100%, and we're at 80% for 10 years. But also, if you look at that replacement project window under the break-even analysis, it says 6 years. And given that this came in while we were in the middle of, at the time, we were in the middle of the height of the COVID sort of stressors, and there's a lot of uncertainty as to what's going on with the office market, and the fact that this is a historic building, which means that really the only way to improve upon this score would be to essentially tear this building down and building something with much more density in it. Because it's not really a problem of the use of the space that's there. It's the fact there's just not enough space relative to the, enough building space relative to the neighborhood. So we think that, it satisfies maybe some other objectives of preserving a historic building and getting activity going on there when, given that this building has been vacant for so long, there's no real certainty that anything would come along within the next 6 years to sort of make a better ultimate net financial impact to the city than what this project would do. So as you can see, going to the fiscal benefit, this project does generate about almost $1.77 million to the city over 10 years and almost $3.5 million over a 20-year span. So again, it's still a healthy amount of revenue, especially compared to a lot of other projects we see. It's just that we generally, like I said, expect a lot more in a downtown parcel. So to the school district, it would be about 74,000. Over 20 years. But as you can see in the red there, it does fall shy of the neighborhood average by almost $500,000 over 10 years and about $776,000 over 20 years to the city. The incentive value is estimated at $633,000 over the 10-year span, which represents about 10.3% of the project cost. Looking at the developer's return without the incentive, he is in the low end of the range at about 7.8%. The range there for this type of property is between 7.4 and 10.1. With the incentive, that does increase to about a 9% rate of return. Again, it's about a $6.1 million project, and this one is looking to get historic tax credits to the tune of about $1.4 to $1.5 million. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, Alderman Boyd, any questions?
No questions.
Alderwoman Davis?
No questions.
Alderwoman Hubbard? Alderwoman Hubbard?
No.
Alderman Kotar?
Chairman, no questions, just a quick comment along with what Jonathan was just mentioning. You know, this building's unique, it's small. The architect, I was able to look this up, was Gio Obata. So the O from HOK, it's a mid-century modern building. It is actually on the National Register of Historic Places. So it's definitely not getting torn down. I mean, it's one of the more historic buildings downtown. That's all I had to add.
Alderwoman Spencer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No questions. I just have I guess a request. The handouts that we have here available, you know, I'm looking on the Google Drive and there's just no way to see the actual numbers in them. At least I'm unable to. I'm zooming in and it all just pixelates. So perhaps there's a way that SLDC can provide those handouts in a readable format, or maybe I'm unaware of a way to make them readable. But it's hard to see on the screen on a laptop, and the numbers are just impossible to really look at. So I'll leave that for maybe our next meeting, and I will defer my questions. I don't have any questions on this particular board bill. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Alderwoman, just so I understand, are you saying that you can't see the presentation, or is there the Google Drive exhibits are not legible?
I appreciate the presentation. I can see them, but it's on a laptop screen. It's very difficult to see the figures. On my monitor, I'm barely able to kind of see them. And the document that we have on Google Drive is difficult to read as well. I don't know if perhaps I'm unaware of a way to be able to zoom in a better way, but it might be helpful if those documents could be sent. That is just a comment in a general sense.
So, well, we want to make sure that you have, have the appropriate materials before you in a way that you can interpret them. I don't know if anybody can email those to her now, to our colleague now.
Mr. Chair, maybe this is just I should maybe just comment for a general sense, maybe moving forward. I'm able to see them on the monitor, so there's no problem with today's hearing, but in general, we may want to send that around. I appreciate the opportunity to weigh in. Thanks.
Thank you, Alderwoman. Alderman Oldenburg.
No questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Alderwoman Boyd.
No questions.
Okay, hearing no other questions, the chair will entertain a motion on board bill number 107.
I move that we adopt board bill 107 with a due pass recommendation.
Second.
Previous.
roll.
Hey, there's been a motion, a second, request for previous roll. Hearing no objections, we'll consider Board Bill 107 that's heard and passed out of committee with the do pass recommendation. Next up, we have Board Bill number 29. This is, I guess I'm sponsoring this, but our colleague from the 7th is conflicted on this. And I have to be honest, I haven't looked at it, but Jonathan, or do we have some speakers on behalf of this bill? Let's see.
Chairman, I know my colleague Rob Preston is representing the developer and here on the call, and I think prepared to speak, and I will be abstaining on this.
Okay, Rob, would you care to give us a quick overview of the project before we get into the financials?
You bet. Of course. Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a little bit of interesting background on this project. This is an amendment to an existing redevelopment plan that was approved back in 2018. So this pertains to the building at the 300 South Broadway. It sits at the corner of Broadway and Clark. It's the former site of the St. Louis Community College and has been totally vacant for a number of years. For those of you with better memories than me, you might remember back in 2018, a plan was passed providing for a total demolition of the building and a construction of a 33-story apartment building. And the abatement package for that involved 20 years of abatement, 10 years at 90%, and then scaling down to 80% at the end of that 20-year period. There was also some drama involved with this. Politically, this building was not eligible for historic tax credits, but because it's appended to some historic buildings and incorporates a lot of historic characteristics from that building, some folks in the city, including I think the Historic Preservation Committee, didn't want to see it torn down. Ultimately, that plan was abandoned. And so we are today presenting a reimagining of the development of this building that we're hopeful is more palatable to everyone. But maybe before I get into that, since I've gone through the history a little bit, let me introduce the developer who's going to undertake the project. It's a group called Bamboo Equity Partners. They're a local real estate investment and advisory firm that's been around for almost a decade now. And maybe you've seen them have completed a lot of successful transactions, been in the newspaper lately, been involved in more than $16 billion worth of deals over the past nearly 10 years. Their principals, Dan Dokovic and Alice Brenner, are both on the phone with us today. So if you have questions about them or the project, they'd be happy to jump in. So the project itself, rather than a demolition of the building, is going to be a total gut rehab. It's going to result in the gut rehab of the existing 6 floors, plus an insert will be constructed on the 7th floor, a new 7th floor that will include a couple apartment units as well as some amenities to be shared by all of the apartment renters. In total, there'll be about 80 apartment units with apartments ranging from a studio layout up to spacious 2 bedrooms. There's going to be 80 parking spaces. I'm not sure if those are on site or negotiated with the nearby garage, but on the 1st floor along Broadway, there's going to be nearly 4,000 square feet of retail space available. Then up on the rooftop, there's going to be a deck with views of Busch Stadium, a pool, workout center, lounge, common area, etc. In total, it's about 91,000 square feet of enclosed space and a total investment of about $21 million. Just because of the complications of the gut rehab and trying to preserve those historic elements, without the benefit of the historic tax credits. By the way, the tax credits aren't available because they were it was made to look like a historic building by blending in with the adjacent building, because it was made to look like historic and not actually historic. The State Preservation Office wasn't willing to designate it. So since they're trying to maintain the continuity with the adjacent building and retain those architectural aspects, it just drives up the cost of the project somewhat. So we're looking for a tax abatement, 10 years at 90%.
Okay. If Jonathan, are you ready to go through your presentation then?
Yeah, I can, and unless you wanted to hear from the developers or anything first.
Well, I think Rob just kind of covered that, so we're ready for you. Was there any other speaker? Why don't you go through it and let me see? I'm not sorry, I got so many windows open here. I'm having trouble finding it. But go ahead and start, Jonathan.
Okay. Yes, this project, starting out, it gets a score project grade of 4.25 out of 5. We estimate that it's going to hit the neighborhood average break even in about 6 years. But then the sustainable revenue target is achieved in year 1. So basically, this is a property where, because it was a tax exempt property before, it sort of changes the way the model treats it, because previously it was not considered property that was tax generating at all. So therefore, it's transitioning it from tax exempt to tax generating gives it allows it to sort of hit that sustainable revenue target earlier. But on a 10-year basis, it's expected to generate $504,000 to the city. And over 20 years, it'd be about $1.15 million. The school district would benefit by $19,000 over 10 years and just under $800,000 over a 20-year period. That's a fiscal advantage to the city over the neighborhood average of $183,000 relative to over 10 years and $243,000 over 20 years. For the school district, that's beating the neighborhood average by $7,000 over 10 years and $166,000 over a 20-year span. The value of the incentive is $739,000, which comes to 3.5% of the total project cost. So relatively low percentage here, given the investment amount. The rate of return, based on the calculations we have, and surely if you guys would like to ask the developer questions about this, I would encourage that. But the rate of return is showing that's below the market range, even with the incentive there. So I'll open it up to any questions if you guys have any.
All right, Alderman Boyd, do you have any questions?
No questions.
Alderwoman Davis, any questions?
No questions, just glad to see the project. It was painful with the other one, but you all figured it out, and thank you.
Alderwoman Hubbard?
No questions.
Let's see. Alderwoman Spencer?
I have no questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Alderman Oldenburg?
Questions, thank you.
Alderwoman Boyd?
No questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Right, if there are no other questions, the chair will entertain a motion to do pass board bill number 129.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we pass Board Bill 129 out of HUD with a do pass recommendation.
It's been moved and
Second.
seconded by the Alderwoman from the 27th.
Previous.
There's a request
Objection.
Yeah.
Objection.
Oh, that's right. You were out on the other one. That's right.
Okay. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Boyd,
Aye.
Alderwoman Davis,
Aye.
Alderwoman Hubbard,
Aye.
Alderman Coder,
Abstain.
Alderwoman Spencer,
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg,
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd,
Aye.
Chairman Rhodey.
Aye.
7 aye votes and 1 abstain.
Okay. Our last board bill for today is regarding the Cortex redevelopment area, board bill number 135. For those of you who are new on the committee, these TIF districts are just a different way of looking, requires a different way of looking at things. Our project-based TIFs are much different when we do our analysis. But Mike, I'm going to start off with Mike Sullivan so he can give you a bit of an overview. Mike's done quite a bit of work on this, and Cortex has, I think, spent a fair amount of effort in trying to present this in a way that fully demonstrates what's happening in the district and how that's impacting the city. And I think it probably is worth a pause to go through this, and then we can sit down and Jonathan can comment on the economics of it. So Mike, thanks for your patience. I'm sorry to have to put you on last, but it's been a long morning. Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you everyone for your time. And I'm glad to say good morning to you all. I wasn't sure if we'd make it before noon, but this is an update of the slides I'll be sharing with you. And this is, as Alderman Rhodey shared, this is a master TIF plan that the city passed in 2013. It's a different way of approaching it, but allows us to plan long term. The city and many of you supported this, and I'm very excited to be meeting with you to share the numbers and the success we've had. I'll go ahead and share my PowerPoint that had been submitted. You should have, the clerk just confirmed that it's being sent out to all the members. But the Cortex area is about 200 acres. And what we're asking today is authorization of an additional 25 million area-wide TIF note. So here's the request. And it's in accordance with the redevelopment agreement that we entered into with the city in 2013. This is an administrative step to satisfy the city's obligation to Cortex to issue the notes pursuant to the redevelopment agreement. We're not asking for anything new. This is just a confirmation we're doing what we said we do, and we need to go through this process with this board bill. By passing this, it will allow us to receive reimbursement for over $7 million that we've already spent, and then additional ones that are in the planning. And what that allows us to do is continue to be capturing TIF revenue. Cortex is a nonprofit, and so we take that money and we invest it in the infrastructure for additional development. No developer is going to spend $10 million to underground electric and put brand new sewer systems in. So that's why this Cortex 501c3 model, with the city being generous with granting us redevelopment rights in 2005 to establish the district, and then following through in 2013 with the master TIF. And this will allow us to pursue the activating additional, what we refer to as redevelopment project areas, RPAs, that will require additional area-wide improvements. To refresh your memory, or the individuals that are new to the committee, we originally in the 2013 plan, there were 11 redevelopment project areas that were approved, and we don't activate them until we're ready with projects. Our first priority was Boyle Avenue in Duncan. That's our main and main. And you see the check marks, that's what we've already approved. And you see the dramatic development along Duncan there, which includes the IKEA in RPA 7, where we put significant infrastructure into that Duncan corridor to prepare everything for that. We are now looking at putting in infrastructure to attract investment for the outer portions of that. This is really an exciting slide. We shared this with you after 5 years, and we recently updated with 7 years. But basically, there's 3 columns here. All the way to the left are the taxing jurisdictions and the monies they've received. So from 2014 to 2020, cumulative, it's been about 84 million. And these are tax revenues after the TIF revenue funds have been paid to us to pay down the TIF notes, and we bonded out the TIF notes. So that money is going to the bondholders to the extent we'd already had things issued. The estimate of the taxes that would have been available had we not gotten the 200-acre redevelopment rights and had not done anything is a little over 4 million a year. So 29 million would have been what would have been collected, and you see the breakdowns so that the city would have gotten, about 6.4 million. The increment is shown here. So that 6.4 million, we've got an additional layer of 14.4 million to get the city alone at 20.8 million. Another thing I want to highlight is there's a misunderstanding, I think, or a lot of people don't appreciate with the TIF. If it's a mainly commercial development, part of the real estate taxes is a commercial surcharge. It's 1.64%. Over 70% of that money goes to the St. Louis schools. So you look at this number here, the city schools would have been at 5.6. They have an additional increment of $9.3 million. And you know how important it is that we get money for the schools. The interesting thing is there are no residents in the Cortex district currently. We're working on residential developments. So we are generating almost $15 million for the schools over the last 7 years, and there were no students that were sent to the schools from the district. So this is listening in on your discussions this morning. You've got tough decisions, hard discussions. This is one to look at and say you made a great decision. Thanks for trusting us, and you continue to support us to continue to generate the taxes. This is just a quick summary of what the various RPA's allocations were, what we've already used to date, and what's remaining. And if you focus on the area-wide improvements, the city authorized $67 million. To date, we'd only had 25 million issued. We are coming back and asking for another 25 million of the 42 million in capacity that we have. And so nothing in addition needs to be requested. This is a quick summary of the categories that area-wide monies can be used. It includes public spaces, which we built the Commons, which is 10.6 million. Anyone that's been to the district, it's where the Bat Wing is. It's right next to the Metro. We have yoga on the green, food trucks, and pre-COVID, a lot more activities. Apologize, background noise. If you're hearing that. The Cortex station, we spent over 13 million on. Structured parking, the phase 1 garage, which was necessary. We prefer not to have to build garages, but people have not yet adopted the public transportation afforded by the station and other things. So we're hoping to build as few garages as possible, but no one else will build them, so we have. Also, conference meeting space, innovation hall, public infrastructure, and that includes, the sewer, utility relocations, et cetera. So we spent over 44 million, and we need this new note to be capturing the additional amount. Apologize, I jumped ahead. This is what we've accomplished to date. Of the 4 million projected over the 25 years of the redevelopment agreement, we're about halfway there with almost 2 million. Construction costs of 700 million. When we complete the neuroscience building that's being constructed by WashU in 2023, that's another 600 million. So that will have almost doubled. Plus we've got others that we're working to finalize plans for. We're over 6,000 jobs, or we were pre-COVID. Annual payroll over 400 million, 420 jobs. And then very, very important statistic, it's on our website, it's updated every quarter. If you recall, before our TIF was passed, everyone focused on minority and women-owned businesses. These were the goals. We're exceeding both of them. Now there's also the workforce inclusion. Every project we keep track of. And these are our results to date. The minority, we're doing pretty well, 23%. We need to plus that up, and we've got programs like the Union Bud program, Build Union Diversity, that's working on that. We've got other programs to increase those numbers. The 5% for women's being met. City residents also low. The Bud program's helping on that, and we're getting involved with schools to get young people involved in potentially the STEM and construction and other areas that we see a large demand. We need to match the people graduating with the opportunities, and apprentices were right on target. Just very quickly, just some snapshots of projects and when they were completed. Prior to the master TIF plan, we just had the 2 CET buildings, our Cortex 1 building, the West End lofts had been redone, and the DuPont Soleil. This is since 2013, 4240, that's where Venture Cafe, pre-COVID, had the weekly gatherings free of charge to the community. 200,000 square foot BJC building. I won't go over all of them. You're all familiar with IKEA, 380,000 square feet, opened in 2015. Gerhardt Lofts, 2016 was a big year with Gerhardt Lofts, 4260 Forest Park, that has Vishia Restaurant. It's got national recognition. They redid the old Pfizer building, and we completed the Commons. In July of 2018, we followed up with the Cortex Station and the 4220. WashU doubled their footprint at the 4480 Clayton, completed our first garage in 2019. The Crescent building is a second generation lab space that was just completed last year, and we were worked with the hotelier. They've opened even in the mid-COVID, and they opened that back in May of this year. So back to the original list of items we're asking for is the issuance of the additional 25 million TIF for the items mentioned. I've got Charles Salisbury, who represents the Comptroller's Office. We reached out to the Comptroller's Office, and Charles, he's online and can verify that the Comptroller's Office is in support of it. And then we also provided our updated numbers to Jonathan Ferry. And Jonathan, as you all know, is available, but his analysis concluded that this is something we absolutely need to do if we are going to be able to keep the TIF revenues flowing in order for us to get the TIF notes paid off and to continue paying for infrastructure. So that's what I have.
Thanks, Mike. Jonathan, did you want to step up? And I don't know if you, I'm sure does not fit your traditional analysis, but did you want
to? You guys can hear me, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, I guess you're correct that this does not fit the traditional analysis. I don't have the normal report to show you. I guess my primary comment that I can provide is that when I looked at the all of the existing notes prior to this one, including the existing area-wide, I looked at the revenue that's come in historic, from what's existing, and we even did an adjustment for COVID to try and sort of stress test this a little bit, where we reduced the revenue by very significant amount, at least by about 25%. Maybe it was a third, I'm trying to remember exactly, for this year. And then basically kept the revenues not getting back to what they were last year until I think about 4 or 5 years from now. Even under that scenario, the existing notes would all be paid off without any additional growth in about the first half of 2034. So everything is on track. And so that, I guess just speaks to the fact that the investments are working as far as paying these notes off. When you add this note on, if there was no additional growth that followed it, then this note would essentially expire not fully repaid. So the loss would be to the investors, not to the city, but it would mean that the city wouldn't sort of get its top half of the revenues until the TIF district expires, so it wouldn't get it early. But I think that the track record shows that whenever they make these investments in this infrastructure and things like that, that it does eventually lead to additional investment. And so I think there's a strong case to be made that passing this note will create additional investment, which will lead to paying off these notes early, just like they're on track to do right now.
Okay, we'll open up some questions. Alderman Boyd, do you have any questions? Alderman Boyd, can't hear you.
Yes, I say, first of all, I want to congratulate Mike with all the good work they're doing over there at Cortex. And I was wondering, when will they start working on Cortex Northwest at I-70 in Goodfellow?
If it were pre-COVID, I'd say let's go to lunch, but no, I appreciate you asking that question, Alderman Boyd. Our three pillars that we're focusing on is building tax space for the city, bringing jobs to the city, and our third one is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we see ourselves as a convener. We need to listen to people, and they need to tell us how we can help or what we can do to bring together. And that's the reason for Innovation Hall in that space. So not only that location, but other locations. Everyone on this call knows we rise as a community, or we don't max out on what we're capable as a community. So we are going through our strategic planning. We're hiring a vice president, diversity, equity, inclusion. We got over 100 applications. We're down to a smaller number, and the talented individuals that are interested in helping us help the community even more is very much part of what we do. Alderman Rohde's on our board, so he sees this, and we have, as of March 30th, a new president and CEO, Sam Fiorello, and he's very, very clear that if we just bring the jobs and we just bring the big companies in, but not everyone is a part of it, Alderman Boyd and others, we will not have succeeded. So if there are opportunities and we can help, we do want to sit down with you. If you can give us some time to get through this COVID thing and get our strategic planning going, but we are open to sit down with individuals that see opportunities that we can help. Another quick item is the MAID that's just north of Delmar, the Makerspace Tech Shop. That was repurposed equipment from Tech Shop that we are leasing to them for $1. And so we are already involved in that neighborhood there, and there's huge potential there, and we're looking at other opportunities. Long answer to what you were probably kind of being tongue in cheek, but we are sincere. So thanks for opening that issue up.
And I certainly want to thank you, and I appreciate that. And I'm excited about the future opportunities. Let me ask you this: how involved were you in the city's economic development, strategic planning process?
Great question. So we received it, probably before it was the final draft. But there's a group that is meeting, and we've got a seat at the table. And if you look at that plan, Alderman Boyd, they identify Cortex as part of the as part of the answers to us being more successful as a community and working together better to collaborate. So I don't know that we were that involved in the putting it together, but now that they're looking to the future as how do we implement it, we are a voice there. And our emphasis is on the life science. You know, we have a few areas that we're more involved in as the kind of the take the lead, and there's others where we're sit and listen and figure out where we might fit in to help. But we certainly don't want to get involved if it wouldn't be beneficial for us to be in a role other than listen and help.
Sure, and I'm sure you guys have quite a bit on your plate. And again, Cortex has been in the works for over 15 years easily. If you just go back and look at the history of the TIFs and all the redevelopment plans. Let me ask you this: as we look at the St. Louis region, and we're looking at the Regional Business Council and City Progress and all these downtown now partnership, I think it is, and we're looking at all these entities that are doing all this great work on behalf of the region, and they're looking at trying to come together and create one entity that will be probably moving in one direction instead of 3 or 4 moving in different directions. Do you guys have a seat at the table in that process?
Yes, we are included in those discussions. That's correct.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good to know. I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Mike. No further questions.
And we've worked with all those groups, Alderman Boyd, but the idea of bringing it together that you're a little bit more streamlined, we welcome that.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. No further questions, Mr. Chairman. You're on mute, Mr. Chairman. You're on mute.
Sorry about that. I had a call come in. Alderwoman Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say to you and Cortex that you truly have been a plus to our region. I've benefited from some of the businesses that have opened in my ward that came from just conversations and the ability for people to network and learn how to create, sustain. All of that is important, and those things have to be available for people to be successful. So we're just looking forward to more. And however, I'm a very pro person for Cortex now, although I wasn't in the beginning, but I am now because you've proven your worth to our community. Thank you.
Thanks for your kind words.
Let's see, Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Hubbard. Okay. Alderman Coder.
No questions.
Alderwoman Spencer.
I have no questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Alderman Oldenburg.
No, thank you, Mike. I have no questions, Mr. Chairman.
Alderwoman Boyd.
I have no questions. I just have a comment. I get excited every time I hear the word Cortex. And so I'm like the man, Boyd. I'm just ready for you to come over in my ward. So I'm excited to hear that you all are making strides. And thank you, Alderman Rhodey, for the vision that you had and that you showed that what could happen when people believe in other organizations. So thank you.
Thank you, Alderwoman. If there's no other questions, the chair will entertain a motion on this board bill.
Entertain, what am I saying? I entertain to help me. Why aren't you all helping me?
Just make a motion to move.
I'll make a motion to move the board bill.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded.
Previous roll.
Wait a minute, Mr. Chairman. But for clarity,
do previous roll.
board bill are we?
I object to previous roll.
Okay, no previous roll.
Okay.
What board bill number are we adopting in the motion?
Oh gosh. Hang on.
135.
135.
Okay.
Okay.
I just want to be clear. So
All right.
the motion is to approve and adopt Board Bill 135.
That's correct.
Thank you, Alderman Boyd.
I believe we've had a second, and there's been a objection to previous roll. So Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Boyd,
Aye.
Alderwoman Davis,
Aye.
Alderwoman Hubbard, Alderman Coder,
Aye.
Alderwoman Spencer,
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg,
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd,
Aye.
Chairman Rhodey.
Aye.
7 aye votes.
Great. By your vote, you've passed out of committee with a do pass recommendation, Board Bill number 135. I believe that concludes today's agenda. Thanks everybody for your patience. We earned our money this morning, 3-hour meeting. Thank you. I'm sorry, I don't have the date of our next meeting handy, but I do know that we have a meeting in, here, I can look it up real quick. We are scheduled for the 18th of November, I think, is our next meeting at this point. So thank you all very much. I believe we're adjourned.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Good seeing everyone.